Chapter 385. Lin Yuan was not surprised to see that the big lizard was only injured and not killed. After all, without the 50 points of true damage from the sea-suppressing tail, no matter how ferocious his attacks were, they would be reduced by half by the lizard's defense. Lin Yuan did not think that he was strong enough to kill a demon beast of the same level with his physical fitness. The sea-suppressing tail was still in cooldown, so were the Water King and formless ice. Lin Yuan did not want to expose his killer move, Void's Embrace, in public, so he had very few moves to use. Although he could kill the big lizard with his own attributes, that kind of victory was not what Lin Yuan needed. A battle to show off his strength ended in a bloody battle. Although the result was the same, the deterrence was completely different. Lin Yuan's black body flew in the air, and his heterochromatic eyes coldly sized up the big lizard. The big lizard turned its body with Lin Yuan, and its red eyes were full of vigilance. Swish! Lin Yuan moved again. The big lizard dodged subconsciously. However, in the next moment, the huge black jiao disappeared from everyone's sight. It's that piece of ice. A light flashed in the Honan Ice Wolf King's eyes, and it murmured, "This kid is really interesting. It's only a water snake that was born with the ice element talent by chance, but its use of the ice element talent is far better than most ice element demonic beasts. He's a good seedling." As the strongest ice element demonic beast in the Hingduan mountain range, the Honan Ice Wolf King once froze 3 cities at the border of the Qiaolo's empire with a wolf howl. There were nearly 1 billion people in the 3 cities, but they all disappeared with a wolf howl. Even now, more than 10 years later, the Honan Ice Wolf King's name was still effective in stopping children from crying at night in the Qiaolo's empire. Such a strong person commented that Lin Yuan was extremely skillful in the use of ice talent. Even if most of the demonic beasts didn't know how many tricks there were, they knew that this black snake was really amazing. Many ice-type beasts even fell into deep thought. What Lin Yuan used was nothing more than a little trick. He used the ice layer to refract sunlight to create a blind spot. Even if Lin Yuan was still in that area, he wouldn't be able to see it with the naked eye. In the past, the profound ice duck had used a similar method to create an illusion that could be seen but could not be touched to confuse the Crimson Flame Crocodile King. Now, Lin Yuan was also using this little trick to hide his body. However, such a simple trick was not something that all ice-type beasts could think of. Even if they could, they might not be able to replicate it. As a combat genius, the big lizard did not panic when it saw that Lin Yuan had hidden himself. Instead, it closed its eyes and began to use its other senses to search for Lin Yuan. Just like how many blind people's sense of hearing and smell were several times more sensitive than ordinary people's, when it closed its eyes, its other senses would be enhanced to a certain extent. Soon, the big lizard closed its eyes and charged toward the area where Lin Yuan was. Lin Yuan, who was accumulating strength, was slightly surprised. However, he had to get up and swing his tail at the big lizard. He didn't know how the big lizard found him. It used the ice layer and light to block its vision, and there was no smell on it. In addition, Lin Yuan did not touch the ground at all. He had been hovering in the air. No matter whether it was sight, smell, or hearing, there was no way to locate Lin Yuan. However, if it was just luck, it was too much of a coincidence. On such a large black and white platform, the big lizard did not go anywhere but came straight for him. Could it be described as luck? The snake tail and the big lizard's head collided again. This time, the big lizard did not retreat half a step, but Lin Yuan was instantly sent flying a long distance away. He was directly pushed out of the blind spot of the group of monsters, and his figure was revealed again. Could it be that this guy did something to me? Lin Yuan thought to himself. Although he did not think that the big lizard had the ability to hide from him and the system, Lin Yuan could not help but suspect what had happened just now. Otherwise, he could not explain how the big lizard could accurately locate his position and launch the charge without holding back at all. Berserk! When the big lizard opened its eyes and looked at Lin Yuan again, a big shot of the desolate demon realm exclaimed in a low voice. Most demonic beasts had mixed bloodlines, but some demonic beasts with pure bloodlines had abilities that other mixed-blood demonic beasts did not have. For example, Berserk was one of them. It could greatly increase the attributes of a demonic beast for a short period of time. However, the side effects were also very obvious. After activating Berserk, a demonic beast would become irritable and would attack all the creatures around it. The big lizard's action just now was because it had detected Lin Yuan's existence after activating Berserk. Driven by the side effects, it launched such a desperate charge. Unfortunately, the big lizard's full charge only pushed Lin Yuan out of the range of the camouflage. It was still a long way from seriously injuring Lin Yuan. Moreover, there was not much time left for the big lizard. Once Berserk ended, the big lizard would fall into an extremely weak state before it defeated or killed Lin Yuan. You really dare to gamble? Subaru crossed his arms in front of his chest and commented with a click of his tongue. None of the spectators here were from the desolate demon realm. Even if they did not consider the strength of the clan behind them, any one of them could easily crush this big lizard. However, the big lizard still activated Berserk, as if it was sure that it could find Lin Yuan and was not worried about offending the leaders of the other clans. Of course, there was nothing wrong with this mentality. In any case, the Beast Master and the three Beast Kings would not speak at the same time. The big lizard and Lin Yuan were going to fight to the death. If it gambled, it would die. If it did not gamble, it would die. If it could end the battle now, the big lizard would live. It seems that our clan leader Rockhide really wants to win, Keiho said with a smile. Keiho also said with a smile. She looked at Rocky with a mocking gaze. Demonic beasts that could activate Berserk were all people with pure bloodlines. Such an existence could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns in the grassy swamp where demonic beasts of various clans lived together. Moreover, the big lizard was not the only one. Many of the big shots who were paying attention to Lin Yuan had records of its younger brother, Blood Claw. An intelligence realm mixed blood lizard could only get the position of commander in the grassy swamp clan. It could be said that it was trash among trash. Chapter 386. Despite having such a trashy younger brother, the big lizard was a demon beast with a pure bloodline. Without a doubt, this guy's luck was ridiculously good, encountering the countless possibilities of atavism. His bloodline was closer to the green marsh lizard's ancestor than Rockhide. After all, the green marsh lizard's ancestor was able to conquer the green marsh, a territory close to the Hingduan mountain range, and leave it to his descendants. Clearly, the green marsh lizard's ancestor was an outstanding existence. At this moment, Rockhide was so regretful that his intestines turned green. Not only was this big lizard a genius in battle, it was also an existence whose bloodline had atavism. It could be said that it was a natural aristocrat in the demon beast world. If it could be properly nurtured, the big lizard could at least replace any one of the three desolate beasts and continue to protect the Green Marsh clan. Even if it didn't have the prestige of the Green Marsh clan today, its strength wouldn't be too bad. At the very least, it could protect 70% of the Green Marsh clan's territory from falling into the hands of other clans. But it was this kind of future hope that it had personally delivered to the blade of the Grim Reaper. As for Keiho's words, it was more of a sarcastic mockery. She just wanted to slap Rockhide's face in front of everyone. They were all demon beasts of the Hingduan mountain range, how could they not know each other? Ever since Rockhide knew of Lin Yuan's cultivation, he didn't have the slightest intention of winning this battle. He went back and picked a guy who thought he was trash to fool around with. But he didn't expect that he would lose his own treasure. Rockhide pondered for a moment. Ignoring the heat on his face, he quickly walked to the side of the three great beast kings and said in a low voice, "We are all brothers and sisters of the Hingduan mountain range. If I have offended you in any way in the past, I asked the 3 great beast kings to forgive this little brother. Today's matter. Speak frankly, what's the price? Subaru couldn't be bothered to play this game with Rawhide and directly interrupted his hypocrisy. When Rawhide moved his butt, the 3 beast kings already knew what Rawhide was planning to do. He wanted to make the 3 beast kings stop the battle, so that Rawhide could ask Beast King Kiran to stop the battle. Although Rawhide was pained by the price he had to pay, he had no choice but to do it for the future of the Green Marsh clan. Although the 3 beast kings were on Lin Yuan's side, strictly speaking, they only cared about the benefits that Lin Yuan could bring to them in the future. But now that Rock Peter was willing to sacrifice himself, they naturally had no reason to reject him. Unlike the benefits that Lin Yuan could bring to them in the future, Rock Peter just had to open his mouth and they would be able to obtain the benefits that were readily available. Seeing how straightforward Subaru was, Rawhide stopped pretending and said in a deep voice, "This little brother has offended you in the past. I asked the 3 beast kings to make a price. Regardless of whether it's fair or not, consider it my apology to the 3 beast kings." Rawhide, who was able to develop the Green Marsh clan from the grassy swamp to its current state, definitely wouldn't do something like this. After all, if he offered too little, he would offend the beast kings and definitely not be able to keep the lizard. But if he offered too much, it would be a huge loss. So he gave the 3 beast kings the opportunity to bid. As long as it wasn't lower than his estimation of the lizard's future, Rawhide was willing to accept it. After all, when it came to buying, even if a price was called out, there was still room for negotiation, right? I want 5 million demonic beasts, whether it's the lizard of the Green Marsh clan or the demonic beasts that are attached to your Green Marsh clan. Recently, the Gallo dynasty has been restless in the demonic beast forest. I reckon that they want to expand 1 or 2 border cities. So, there will be a tough battle on my side soon, and I'm currently lacking in combat power. Raymond took the lead and stated his conditions. Rawhide's mouth twitched slightly. He completely didn't expect that Raymond didn't want territory or spirit items. The moment he opened his mouth, he wanted to send the demonic beasts under his command to assist in the battle. This was a solid blow to Rawhide's body. 5 million demonic beasts sounded like a lot, but in reality, it wasn't much. For demonic beasts with extremely high reproductive abilities, they could easily produce dozens of young demonic beasts in a single year. Even if only a tenth of them could become demonic beasts, they could still provide a dozen or so demonic beasts for the clan every year. And when these demonic beasts grew up, they would form new families, which was why demonic beasts were divided into so many tribes and clans. A mere 5 million demonic beasts was something the Green Swamp clan could gather in a single day. However, these demonic beasts were all borrowed by Raymond. As long as the war over there ended, these demonic beasts would have to be returned to the Green Marsh clan. Therefore, Raymond would definitely use these demonic beasts as cannon fodder. When the time came, Raymond would be merciful if only 100,000 of the 5 million demonic beasts could survive. Therefore, in order to send out these 5 million demonic beasts, Rock Skin would have to give the clans under his command sufficient benefits. Otherwise, there would definitely be a shortage of demonic beasts. Even if there were enough demonic beasts, there was no guarantee that Raymond wouldn't come looking for trouble after the war. Wolf King, it's not that this little brother doesn't want to give you face, but the Green Marsh clan's manpower has been very tight recently. Especially with that black snake attacking without declaring war and slaughtering my Green Marsh clan's demonic beasts, we've lost a large number of people. There are also some demonic beasts who saw that our Green Marsh clan was in trouble and announced their departure before the black snake attacked. There are even some who want to take advantage of the situation to rob us. I'm also in a terrible fix. Rawhide rubbed his claws in fear and said in a deep voice, 5 million demonic beasts, the Green Marsh clan definitely won't be able to gather that much in a short period of time. What this little brother can promise to the Wolf King is at most 3 million demonic beasts. Moreover, I can guarantee that at least a quarter of these 3 million demonic beasts will be lizard men. Equipped with the various military equipment purchased from the human caravans, the combat strength of these 3 million demonic beasts will definitely be much stronger than 5 million ordinary demonic beasts. Raymond pondered for a moment, then narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you bargaining with me?" "I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare." Rawhide waved his claws and sighed. This little brother really wants to, but his strength is lacking. It's not very possible to gather 5 million demonic beasts for the Wolf King. The only thing this little brother can do is to convince the demonic beasts of my clan. Of these 3 million demonic beasts, I can guarantee that at least a third, and close to half, will be lizard men who have just upgraded their equipment. "Oh, that's a bit sincere." Raymond nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Then I'll consider you to have passed my test. Remember, once my conscription order reaches the Green Marsh clan, I want to see the demonic beast army you've prepared set out. Otherwise, don't blame me for not fighting with the humans and attacking you first." Chapter 387. The frigid Wolf King's territory wasn't a peaceful place. It was adjacent to the border cities of the Jiaolu, Qingjiang, and Luofeng dynasties. Whenever the three dynasties coveted the Hingduan Mountains, the frigid Wolf King had to stand up and organize the Yao beasts to counterattack the humans, regardless of whether the frigid Wolf King was willing or not. He didn't expect to kill a lot of humans, but he could at least protect the Yao beast forest as a buffer zone from being occupied by the humans. It was a true battleground. After all, while fighting the humans, he also had to guard against the cold knives from the various Yao beast clans in the Hingduan Mountains. After getting past Raymond, Rawhide finally let out a sigh of relief and looked at Keiho. Keiho snorted coldly and didn't look at Rawhide. Rawhide smiled and said confidently, "I know how dissatisfied the colorful Snake Queen is with me. Although your clansmen lost a few territories to me back then, and although they are no longer under the control of my Green Swamp clan, if the Snake Queen is willing to wait for a while, this little brother is willing to take back those territories and offer them to the Snake Queen." It was true that Keiho and Rawhide had a conflict, but it was still the same old saying. At the level of a great beast king, they didn't care about how many territories they had under their name, nor did they care about how much profit those territories could bring them. They cared more about the situation of the entire Hingduan Mountains. Of course, they also cared about their own reputation. The Yao beasts under Keiho's command lost their territories. A great beast king couldn't even compete with a great beast king who wasn't even a great beast king candidate. This matter wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't a small one either. At the time, it caused a lot of waves. Many Yao beasts with ulterior motives even spread rumors that Keiho didn't have the ability to be a great beast king. However, these Yao beasts with ulterior motives didn't end up well in Keiho's hands, so the other Yao beasts gradually forgot about this matter. All these years, the grudge between Rawhide and Keiho was because Rawhide had made Keiho lose face. As long as Rawhide could lower his head and regain his reputation for Keiho, letting him go would be a piece of cake. Keiho naturally wouldn't push him to his death as the leader of the Green Swamp clan. It's just a few lousy territories. Do you think this king really cares about them? Keiho rolled her eyes at Ikigami, but she honestly took a step back. Ape King, you, Rockskin rubbed his claws with a worried expression on his face. After all, the Black Snake King was a clan subordinate, and the other two Beast Kings didn't. But today's matter involved Chihiro's reputation was a matter. If it was Sui King's reputation was a matter. But, today, SSS. Was King's reputations as. This king to the swamp understand clan, and swamp. And, as well. Clan, it's. This king. This. Ants to. The, Was. Hearing this, Rock-Skin's face lit up with joy. But Suhiro didn't wait for Rawhide to speak. He suddenly changed the topic and said, "If you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. From tomorrow until today, 60% of the phase produced by the Green Swamp clan's territory will be offered to the royal court. Once the deal is done, it will be given to the Black Jiao. I will arrange for a few beast kings to stay in the grassy swamp to supervise this matter. Do you have any objections?" This. Rockhide's expression became increasingly stiff. In order to gather an army of 3 million demonic beasts for Raymond, the Green Swamp clan would have to pay a considerable amount of spiritual items. Keiho's previous territories were indeed no longer under the Green Swamp clan's control. If the Green Swamp clan wanted to take them back, they would have to resort to extreme methods such as war and land swapping. This would be a considerable expenditure that would almost empty the Green Swamp clan's treasury. In fact, even the Green Swamp clan's treasury would be damaged by half. Now, Suhiro was pulling the carpet from under him. What did it mean to only be able to harvest 30% of the phase in the territory in 3 years? The grassy swamp's territory wasn't small, and 30% of the phase was a considerable amount. But for cultivation resources like phase, once they matured, apart from a few that needed to wait for their age to be effective, most of them were directly eaten by the phase. The Green Swamp clan produced a lot of phase in a year, but they also consumed a lot of phase. 30% of the phase might barely be enough to fill their stomachs. Moreover, weren't those small beast kings attached themselves to Rawhide because of the Green Swamp clan's reputation? Now that they were hanging the Green Swamp clan's banner, they could only get 30% of the phase produced in their territory. If those beast kings didn't take this opportunity to leave the Green Swamp clan, Rawhide would directly pluck off his head and let Lin Yuan kick it like a ball. At this moment, Rawhide was finally certain that the 3 beast kings couldn't stand the Green Swamp clan anymore. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they had been thinking about weakening the Green Swamp clan for a long time. Lin Yuan was just a blade in their hands. A cold glint flashed in Rawhide's eyes, but just like Suhiro, this cold glint only lasted for a moment before disappearing without a trace. He said with an obsequious smile, "Ape King, this little brother feels deeply guilty and is indeed willing to accept punishment. But now, the Green Swamp clan has just experienced a war, and the dead phase have yet to be properly dealt with. Their descendants also need to be provided for by the clan. This will almost empty half of the Green Swamp clan's savings. I still need to give phase to the Wolf King and Snake Queen. What do you think about this?" "That's your problem, it has nothing to do with us." Suhiro grinned malevolently at Rawhide and said in a cold voice, "You asked us to offer a price. Now that we've made it clear to you, I definitely don't have any room to bargain. If you're not willing, then I'll just treat your previous words as farts." Raymond smiled and said, "Brother Rawhide, it's fine if you really can't take out phase. I've been in a state of war all year round. The 3 million Fey army is my concession to you, but if you really lack phase to feed those Feys in the clan, we can't really go too far. How about this, you can have your Feys serve in my territory. Just like how humans hire demon slayers, I'll pay Feys to hire them to fight. The fee for this hire will also have to be paid according to what I said. 60% to the royal court, 10% to the Black Jiao." Subaru said to Raymond with a serious expression, as if he was afraid that Raymond would forget the price he offered. He didn't have the slightest intention of giving Rawhide a chance to drill, which made Rawhide's face burn with embarrassment. If it wasn't for the inappropriate atmosphere and environment, Rawhide wouldn't have been able to hold back his anger. Chapter 388. Of course, of course. Little brother naturally won't forget elder brother's words. Raymond also gave a hollow laugh. The 3 Beast Kings' resources and income were all directly deposited into the Monster Beast Imperial Court. Therefore, this 60% income was no different from going from left hand to right hand. Moreover, this was Raymond's own capital. The other two Beast Kings definitely wouldn't get a share. It was equivalent to Raymond only paying 40% of the cost to hire a group of elite monster beasts from the Green Swamp clan. Sword Face's face was as gloomy as water. Subara's arms were still crossed in front of his chest as he coldly said, "Right now, you are the one who is begging us, not the one who is forcing you to take out these things. Provoking the Black Jiao was your own doing. You didn't want to suffer the consequences and ran to the monster beast imperial court to complain. In the end, you lifted a rock and smashed your own foot. Who can you blame? As long as you act as if nothing happened just now, then we have nothing to say." Keiho smiled and said, "We are all brothers and sisters of the Hengduan mountain range. How can there be something like who is making things difficult for who? Rock Skin, we really won't force you to take out these things. I even hope that you will carefully consider whether it is worth it to pay such a huge price for a little brat who you don't even know if he can grow up." Rock Skin's face was as gloomy as water. He didn't respond to Keiho's words. When the three Beast Kings opened their mouths today, Rock Skin knew that the three Beast Kings had already checked the bottom line. Their goal was to empty out all the resources in the Green Swamp clan's hands. Taking benefits from the Green Swamp clan was secondary. More importantly, they wanted to suppress the Green Swamp clan. If Rock Skin really agreed to this condition, at least within 3 years, not only would the Green Swamp clan's strength not improve, it would even weaken due to the departure of countless little Beast Kings. However, not only would it sacrifice a good seedling if it didn't agree to the conditions of these three Beast Kings, but it might not even be able to protect the things in its hands. Lin Yuan was in the limelight at the moment, but his strength was still lacking. So, Lin Yuan was nothing more than a chess piece in the eyes of these three Beast Kings. Today, Lin Yuan could be this blade, and tomorrow, the other demon beasts could also be this blade. Sooner or later, the Green Marsh clan would fall apart due to the little tricks of these three great Beast Kings. Only when the three great Beast Kings had achieved their goal would they stop attacking the Green Marsh clan. Oh, no, at that time, the Green Marsh clan would no longer exist. I agree. Although Rock Skin's expression was still gloomy, he quickly compromised. He wasn't an ignorant fool. Since he was clear about the purpose of the three great Beast Kings, he wouldn't brace himself to confront them head-on. If he agreed, he would be able to maintain peace for at least 3 years. Who knows what changes would happen in the Hengduan Mountains by then? It was much better than being stabbed with a knife tomorrow and being stabbed with a spear in the back. At this moment, the berserk state of the giant lizard had reached its end. Its originally irritable momentum finally calmed down at this moment, and its face was filled with unconcealable exhaustion. After regaining its consciousness, the giant lizard glanced at Lin Yuan, who was more than 10 meters away from it, and closed its eyes as if it had accepted its fate. It had taken out all its trump cards, but it still couldn't do anything to Lin Yuan. Now, it no longer had the strength to continue fighting. When it faced Lin Yuan again, it had no other choice but to wait for its death. Lin Yuan's body arched slightly, and he was ready to shoot out and kill the giant lizard at any time. After all, the giant lizard in its berserk state was like a hedgehog, and he had no way to attack it. He was even beaten up badly by its crazy counterattacks. If it weren't for the support of the full-level golden body technique and the flood dragon scale armor, Lin Yuan probably wouldn't have been able to see much flesh on his body at this moment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have retreated more than 10 meters away and looked at the giant lizard in a frenzy. Boom! Just as Lin Yuan was about to rush out, a powerful momentum descended from the sky and directly fixed him in place. Under the suppression of this momentum, Lin Yuan turned his head with some difficulty and immediately saw a Rock Skin standing with the three Beast Kings. After brainstorming for a bit, Lin Yuan quickly guessed why Subara suddenly stopped him from killing the giant lizard. There were no eternal enemies or friends in the world, but benefits were definitely eternal. During the period when the giant lizard went berserk, Rock Skin probably gritted his teeth and paid a lot of blood before he agreed to let the three beast kings protect the giant lizard. At the beginning of this battle, the three beast kings were also prepared to protect Lin Yuan. After all, they had only heard a lot about Lin Yuan and didn't know much about him, so they couldn't be sure if Lin Yuan could win. However, the three beast kings didn't protect him because he had paid a heavy price, but because they wanted to earn endless benefits from him. "Come here, I have something to tell you." Subaru waved at Lin Yuan, and his loud voice rang out first. After all, the beast kings who were watching the battle had seen it before. When they saw that the battle was suddenly interrupted and Rockskin was standing beside the big beast kings, they quickly realized what had happened. They couldn't help but twitch their lips. It had been a long time since they had seen such outstanding juniors fighting each other. They couldn't help but feel a little unhappy that the battle was suddenly interrupted. Lin Yuan nodded, and Subaru released the shackles on his body. Then, Lin Yuan turned his head and glanced at the dying giant lizard not far away. He could only grit his teeth and fly toward Subaru. In the end, it was because he wasn't strong enough. In the eyes of these beast kings, he could be used as a pawn to exchange benefits at any time. Lin Yuan wanted to take advantage of the moment when the beast kings let down their guard and directly kill the giant lizard that Rock Skin had paid a heavy price to protect. However, after thinking carefully, Lin Yuan gave up on this tempting idea. After all, the beast kings of the desolate demon realm weren't to be trifled with. Not to mention whether Lin Yuan had the strength to kill the giant lizard under their noses. Even if he had the strength, if he provoked these beast kings for the sake of revenge, would he still be able to do business in the northern frontier? However, in Lin Yuan's heart, he still listed the three beast kings as vengeful people. Indeed, he wasn't strong enough and deserved to be used as a pawn to exchange benefits. The rules of the world were like this. Aside from the existences standing at the top of the world, who wasn't a pawn in the hands of others. However, this feeling wasn't very pleasant. Therefore, after he had enough strength, Lin Yuan would sooner or later get back at them and properly vent his anger. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan had already flown in front of Subaru. Chapter 389. Subaru told Lin Yuan all the conditions that Rockhide had promised him, then transmitted his voice. "This isn't something that can be decided by us subjects. The Green Swamp clan has been wantonly expanding their territory in the Hingduan mountain range all these years. They simply don't put us in their eyes. Suppressing them has always been the Beast Master's idea. I admit that you are indeed being used as a blade by us today, but your potential is right there. In the future, you will definitely surpass us and become the Beast Master. You might even become an existence even more terrifying than the current Beast Master. Therefore, we don't have any malice towards you." Lin Yuan indifferently glanced at Subaru. 10% of the Green Swamp clan's income had to be handed over to him. Don't underestimate this insignificant 10%. The difference between the Green Swamp clan and Lin Yuan's Stoneclaw Forest wasn't as simple as 1 or 2 grades. The Green Swamp clan's income in a year was at least 20 to 30 years of Stoneclaw Forest's income. This wasn't a small amount, and it was Subaru who had fought for it for him. This meant that Subaru really didn't have any malice towards him. Otherwise, if he had already done such a disgusting thing, why would he mind being even more disgusting? Even if the three Beast Masters took all the benefits for themselves, Lin Yuan couldn't turn hostile on the spot. After all, he still had to rely on the Hingduan mountain range's Fey business to stabilize the people of the northern frontier. Only then would he have enough funds and food to invest in the various projects that were under construction. The Hingduan mountain range's existence gave him convenience. He relied on the Hingduan mountain range to barely maintain the current idyllic situation of the northern frontier. Paw. Paw. Subaru lightly patted Lin Yuan's head and chuckled, "Do your best, young man." There are so many candidates for the position of Beast Master in the Hingduan mountain range, but this old man thinks highly of you. You started from scratch and even a desolate demon realm existence like Rockhide had to suffer in your hands. You are much stronger than those little bastards who relied on the clan's influence to become candidates. Raymond and Keiho were whispering something to each other. After all, Lin Yuan was nominally Suhibaru's man. If they rashly came over to pick him up, Suhibaru, the big brother, would not treat them well. After all, the Sacred Heart Ape King was the most realistic of the three great beast kings. Either there were enough benefits, or they had to give him enough face. Otherwise, if you made him unhappy, he could tear you into minced meat in minutes. Lin Yuan had obtained his share of benefits, Rockskin had protected the giant lizard, and the royal court had weakened the Green Swamp clan. The three beast kings had also profited greatly. No one had thought that this matter would develop into a happy ending. However, there were a few beast kings present who were truly happy. This was a big question mark. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months had passed. Winter had completely ended. Other than the territories of the ice-type beast kings in the Hingduan mountain range, the last layer of snow had completely melted. The northern frontier now had 21 large-scale settlements, countless medium-sized towns, and small villages. The spring planting work had been completely completed, which also meant that the northern frontier had successfully attracted the refugees. Not to mention that the situation in the Shinwu dynasty had not stabilized yet. Even if it had, at least before this year's autumn harvest, they could forget about any of these refugees leaving the northern frontier. Lin Yuan lazily lay in the backyard of the northern frontier prince's mansion, basking in the sun. A dim light lingered in his multicolored eyes. No one knew what he was thinking, but the coldness in his eyes gradually spread. Hu Yan hurriedly rushed into the backyard and said with a gloomy face, "Something happened." Lin Yuan woke up from his thoughts and raised his head to look at Hu Yan. Lei Fan's death has been confirmed. It was done by the sect of the Blood Divine. Also, I heard that the Freedom Courtyard had wanted to move out of the northern frontier some time ago, but they were blocked by the sect of the Blood Divine. Both sides fought fiercely in the territory of the Freedom Courtyard. I heard that the Freedom Courtyard suffered a great loss. Master Kuhai lost an arm, Master Kushuan had his eyes gouged out, and even Master Kyuan was heavily injured. Hu Yan's face was unusually solemn as he slowly spoke of the information he had gathered. Cultivators of the void netherworld realm were already at the top of the world. At least on the surface, that was the case. The Shinwu dynasty had been established for several decades, and the number of void netherworld realm cultivators who died in accidents or were killed by others was less than 3. News of void netherworld realm cultivators being severely injured or crippled was unheard of. But now, there were 3 such cases in the northern frontier. Lei Fan's death did not come as a surprise to Lin Yuan. After all, Lei Fan was the one who orchestrated the massacre of the various sects in the northern frontier. The members of these sects hated Lei Fan more than they hated Lin Yuan. After all, at that time, Lin Yuan was still in the mystic territory and had yet to come out. In addition, the northern frontier king's palace and the demon emperor's assembly had gone silent, which made people feel that Lin Yuan had no intention of starting a war at this time. Hence, the blood debt fell on Lei Fan. Ever since the day the news of Lei Fan's death was released, and the empty tomb that Lin Yuan had prepared for him was dug up, he knew that the sects had no intention of letting the matter rest. He had thought that after not hearing any news of Lei Fan for 2 months, he would have escaped from the northern frontier to look for Lei Chuming. He had not expected to hear news of Lei Fan's death today. However, Lin Yuan was not surprised. After all, with a few void netherworld realm cultivators leading the search for him, the possibility of Lei Fan escaping from the northern frontier was not high. "Let's go." Lin Yuan rose into the air and said expressionlessly, "Let's go to the Freedom Courtyard and take a look." Let's see who is so powerful to be able to cause the Freedom Courtyard, a sect with 3 void netherworld realm cultivators, to suffer such a huge loss. Although Old Demon Blood Sea was one of the void netherworld realm cultivators in the northern frontier, but strictly speaking, Old Demon Blood Sea was definitely the weakest of the few. Not to mention Yan Xingqi, who was known as the strongest cultivator in the northern frontier. Even Master Kyuan could easily defeat Old Demon Blood Sea. But today, 2 of the 3 void netherworld realm cultivators from the Freedom Courtyard were injured and 2 of them were injured. The news that was released from this was really thought-provoking. If this was not a show that the Freedom Courtyard and the sect of the Divine Blood Sea had orchestrated, then the sect of the Divine Blood Sea should have colluded with some incredible existence. It might even be one of the sects that he had seen from the information in the secret territory. If it was really such an existence, then the matter had already reached a point where Lin Yuan could not control it. It was even possible that the entire northern frontier could be overturned by the other party. Lin Yuan could not help but be cautious. Lord Demon Emperor, please wait. Hu Yan took a step forward and stood in front of Lin Yuan, and said with a cold face, "From what I can see, the sect of the Divine Blood Sea is obviously provoking us on purpose. Especially Lei Fan's corpse, which was openly hung outside the mountain gate of the sect of the Divine Blood Sea. There must be a secret behind this matter, I think." Chapter 390. The news of Lei Fan's death had long spread. Not only had the sect of the Divine Blood intercepted and killed Lei Fan, they had even publicly hung Lei Fan's corpse outside the mountain gate. It was obvious that they were planning to humiliate the Wang residents in the northern frontier. In addition, when the Freedom Courtyard was about to move out of the northern frontier, they were suddenly blocked by the sect of the Divine Blood. After a battle between both parties, the sect of the Divine Blood, which was the weakest of the super forces in the northern frontier, had actually suppressed the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard and forced them to retreat. What the hell were they doing? This was like slapping Lin Yuan in the face. This meant that the sects in the northern frontier were determined to go against Lin Yuan to the end. What are you looking at? Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes impatiently. The information he had obtained from the palace was too shocking. Even the slightest bit of information could cause a huge uproar in the Sky Martial continent. It could even cause everyone to be in danger. Hence, he did not dare to say much. Now, he wanted to ascertain whether the sect of the Divine Blood's sudden rise was related to those existences. Why don't we let the brothers from the Demon Emperor's Association be the vanguard and see what trump cards the sect of the Divine Blood has? Hu Yan laughed bitterly and said helplessly, "The sect of the Divine Blood has now cut off all means of retreat. I'm afraid that they will take the opportunity when you go to investigate and kill the Demon Emperor without following the rules. When that happens, the nearby northern battlefront army might not be able to provide support in time. I implore the Demon Emperor to think twice before acting." If the person in charge of the Wang residents in the northern frontier was still Lei Fan, he would definitely not speak like Hu Yan. Firstly, Lei Fan trusted Lin Yuan's ability. Secondly, Lei Fan could not wait for Lin Yuan to die. In this way, he would be able to grasp the real power of the northern frontier. If necessary, Lei Fan would even cooperate with the sect of the Divine Blood. However, after witnessing how Lin Yuan removed Lei Fan's forces with a smile, Hu Yan did not dare to show any of his thoughts. Especially at such a critical moment, he could not bear to see Lin Yuan put himself in danger. The purge of the sects in the northern frontier had reached the final stage. If it were not for the sect of the Divine Blood's interference, the Freedom Courtyard would have already moved out of the northern frontier. Even if the Broken Moon House wanted to stay, they did not have the courage to confront the Wang residents in the northern frontier. After finishing the work of eliminating the sects in the northern frontier, the next step was to take action against the aristocratic families. If it were not for Lin Yuan taking the lead, Hu Yan really did not know where to start. After all, his Hu family was also a part of the aristocratic families. Humph, Lin Yuan sneered and said expressionlessly, what level is the Freedom Courtyard at? With 3 Kongming realm experts in charge, the sect of the Divine Blood dared to block them and attack them. The defensive power of the Wang residents in the northern frontier is far inferior to that of the Freedom Courtyard. So what if I hide in the Wang residents in the northern frontier? If they really want to kill me, can't they block the Wang residents in the northern frontier? Hu Yan curled his lips and thought to himself, these are 2 different things. No matter how nicely the sect of the Divine Blood blocked the Freedom Courtyard, it was just a dispute in Jianghu. Not many people cared about how many bits and pieces were hidden in this matter. They just treated it as a show. However, if the sect of the Divine Blood blocked the Wang residents in the northern frontier, it was a different matter. This was called King Rebellion. They didn't even care about the Freedom Courtyard of the 3 Kongming sects, so why would they care about the Shenwu dynasty in the midst of a storm? After destroying our so-called Wang residents in the northern frontier, if the sect of the Divine Blood behaved a little better, wouldn't they still accept the edict of the Shenwu dynasty and become the new king of the northern frontier? Lin Yuan spat out another sentence. His tone was already cold. This time, Hu Yan opened his mouth but did not say a word. Lin Yuan was a demonic beast born in the Hingduan Mountains. In addition, he had consecutively destroyed cities on the northern frontier. Logically speaking, Lin Yuan should not be tolerated by the Shenwu dynasty. However, in order to stabilize the situation, the Shenwu dynasty still conferred a hereditary title of King of the Northern Frontier. Even the evil creature Lin Yuan was reluctantly conferred by the Shenwu dynasty as the god of the Northern Frontier. In name, he was in charge of good weather and peace. In fact, he gritted his teeth and handed over the Northern Frontier to Lin Yuan to govern. One of the reasons was that Lei Chuxing wanted to see what would happen to the Northern Frontier after Lin Yuan's new policies were implemented on the Northern Frontier. However, more importantly, it was because Lei Chuxing wanted to stabilize the situation on the Northern Frontier. There's no need to go. I've already checked. There's no one in the Church of the Blood God. Xia Xiu, who had snuck into the Northern Frontier King's mansion, suddenly spoke. Lin Yuan and Hu Yan followed the voice and looked over. They saw Xia Xiu sitting on the wall. The black robe he wore was stained with blood in many places. Xia Xiu's face was very pale. He looked like he had lost a lot of blood. However, the fact that he could still appear here meant that he had already taken care of his injuries. Seeing that the flood dragon and human were both at a loss, Xia Xiu jumped down from the wall and said in a deep voice, "The Church of the Blood God suddenly erupted with such powerful energy. It completely overturned the understanding of the association of the Demon Emperor. Furthermore, we have lost contact with the spies we planted in the Church of the Blood God. I had no choice but to personally take people there. I didn't expect that the Church of the Blood God had become an empty mountain. There was no one at all. However, they seemed to have expected that someone would sneak into the Church of the Blood God to investigate the situation. They even set up many traps. Of the 20 or so brothers who went with me, only 3 came out alive." Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He wasn't surprised. After all, even Xia Xiu, a natural assassin with the gift of shadow affinity, was in such a mess. It was reasonable that the ordinary cultivators had suffered heavy losses. However, according to the information from the spies of the Northern Frontier and the Association of the Demon Emperor, the people of the Church of the Blood God swaggered out of the mountain gate of the Church of the Blood God during the day and then returned to the Church of the Blood God at night. According to Xia Xiu's temperament, if he didn't get some important information after sneaking into the Church of the Blood God, he definitely wouldn't give up. However, he came back empty-handed, which meant that there was indeed no one in the mountain gate of the Church of the Blood God. If they were just exploring the periphery, the spies trained by the Association of the Demon Emperor wouldn't have lost so many people. However, if the entire mountain gate of the Church of the Blood God had been searched, then where were the people who entered and left the Church of the Blood God? Could there be some secret mechanism? Hu Yan asked with a frown. His expression was also not very good. Hu Yan had been in the northern frontier for a long time, but this was the first time he had heard of such a strange thing. Xia Xiu shook his head and said with a serious expression, "I brought people to investigate the mountain gate of the Church of the Blood God and each mountain peak. There were no traces of any secret mechanism. I also picked some mountains to check. There were not many traces of man-made destruction. The entire mountain should still be solid." This chapter is for listening to G Book. Friends, add more. Thank you. Vote Mimi Go Cup. Chapter 391. What the hell is going on? Hu Yan muttered a few words, but his back was drenched in cold sweat. The trick of making people appear alive was not a trick. Those disciples of the Church of the Blood God were existences that could block the mountain gate of the Freedom Courtyard and wrestle with the disciples of the Buddhism sect. To say that they were illusions was purely self-deception. However, they could not understand at all how the disciples of the Church of the Blood God could appear out of thin air and then disappear into thin air. Lin Yuan just raised his eyelids. The Buddhism sect and the Confucian sect existed in this world. Although he had never seen ghosts and monsters, he could not deny that there were no such things in the Tianwu continent. After all, the existence of the black water of the Styx River was enough for Lin Yuan to overturn some of his previous conclusions. If there were ghosts and monsters, he could now release a group of them with his talent. Interesting. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a sneer. The reason for the sudden appearance and disappearance of the Church of the Blood God was still unclear, but he was certain that the sudden rise of the Church of the Blood God had nothing to do with the information he obtained from the palace. After all, none of those unspeakable existences would play such tricks. On the contrary, the action of confronting the Freedom Courtyard was a bit like the style of those existences. It's too interesting. Xia Xiu licked his lips, and a devilish smile appeared on his handsome face. He said in a cold voice, "I wonder if these existences who are good at tricks will make the sound of their blood bleeding when I slit their throats with a dagger." For the bloodthirsty Xia Xiu, there was nothing more exciting than ending someone's life with his own hands. This was a psychological disease that Xia Xiu had been infected with after living among criminals for many years. Although Lin Yuan knew psychology, he was not a psychiatrist. He could not cure Xia Xiu's perverted disease and could only say that his words went in one ear and out the other. He was an existence that could even control a sect with a void netherworld realm cultivator. Even the 3 void netherworld realm cultivators of the Freedom Courtyard had suffered quite a bit. An assassin who wasn't even a Heaven Star border realm cultivator wanted to slit his throat. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and said in a deep voice, "It seems that I have to go to the Freedom Courtyard this time. I wonder what new information those masters can give us." On the other side, a pale-faced young man was walking on the bustling street of Shunning City. His long hair, which reached his waist, was a mixture of black and white. His clothes were also a bit strange. He was wearing a Shuangjin dynasty martial crotch with a silver soft armor inside and a gray scholar's robe outside. His outfit looked a bit out of place, but no one on the bustling street gave him a second glance. That idiot Fire Qilin, did he die in such a desolate place? The strange man stretched his back and muttered to himself, "However, there are 2 interesting fellows in this damned place." A human soul was actually able to cross the sea of bitterness and come to this world. He even possessed a black snake and became a demon. The other imitated the Fire Kirin and played with death, deceiving the world and becoming a second person. Speaking of this, the strange man spread out his right hand and his fingers kept shaking. He laughed and said, "The beast of immortality is a demon, and the second person is a devil. I didn't expect that I would encounter such an interesting battle on this mission." Although the strange man did not mention names, just like the demonized Xuanwu that was suppressed in the secret realm, he instantly deduced Lin Yuan's origin. He even calculated the reason behind the rise of the sect of the Blood Divine. If Lin Yuan saw this scene, he would have opened his eyes wide and called him a god. At the same time, in the mountain gate of the sect of the Blood Divine, a young man in a blood-red robe suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth and said, "How dare you calculate my origin? How dare you?" In the dark, a voice sounded. "Demons perish by themselves, while devils perish by the heavens. I was able to deduce your background, so I'm naturally not afraid of you making a fuss about it. If you want to wrestle with me, then you have to hide your name and background well. Don't let me see it. Otherwise, I only have to call out your name, and it won't be long before the heavenly tribulation arrives." Suddenly, the strange man's voice suddenly sounded. The malice in his tone was not concealed at all. "How dare you?" The blood-robed young man slammed the table beside him and said coldly, "If I hadn't just reincarnated and my cultivation hadn't recovered to the level of my previous life, requiring the blood sacrifice of thousands of people in the northern frontier, I could destroy an ant like you in a day's time. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me?" Old Demon Blood River, who was attracted by the blood-robed young man's slamming of the table, ran into the room and cupped his hands. He said, "Ancestor, why are you so angry? Could it be that my disciples have not treated you well?" The blood-robed young man shot a glance at Old Demon Blood River. There was no change in his expression. He raised his hand and wiped the black blood at the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. He said with a pale face, "What about the things I asked you to prepare?" 3,000 young boys and girls have been prepared. The various materials for setting up the array have also been purchased. Most of them have been stored in the warehouse. A small portion is on the way to the northern frontier, but an awkward look suddenly appeared on Old Demon Blood River's face as he said in a deep voice, "Ancestor, this is no longer the era when you were all-powerful. The strange beasts you mentioned are all priceless ancient species in this world. Furthermore, they are priceless. It's impossible to obtain them in a short period of time. Trash." The blood-robed young man shot a cold glance at Old Demon Blood River. The blood-robed young man was clearly only at the Heavenly Dipper realm, but Old Demon Blood River was so frightened by his glance that he began to tremble. His legs went soft as he knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the blood-robed young man. He said in a deep voice, "How can I not take the ancestors' instructions seriously? I really don't have the strength to do so. It's just too difficult to silently obtain an ancient species as a primer for the array. Ancestor, please let me off this time." The blood-robed young man shook his head and sighed. "That black Jiao has already noticed us. Before he realizes what we are going to do, we have to speed up the plan. What's more, now that an unknown bastard has joined the fray, there are more variables. Even I don't dare to say that I can control the entire situation." His original intention was to divert Lin Yuan's attention to the battle with the sections. However, he never expected that before Lin Yuan could even head to the Freedom Courtyard, the Demon Emperor Association had already found out about him. In addition, there was a fellow who could deduce his roots. He was feeling even more uneasy. "Thank you for voting for me." Chapter 392. 4 hours later. Lin Yuan and the others came to the gate of the Freedom Yard. A group of monks in gray robes guarded the mountain gate with vigilant faces. They were no longer holding wooden sticks that could not even cause a scratch. Instead, they were holding demon-subduing pestles made of pure metal, Buddhist commandment blades, and other deadly weapons. "Stop!" The leading monk stopped Lin Yuan and the others who were going up the mountain. "How dare you? Even if you don't know me, you should know the Demon Emperor, right?" Hu Yen walked out of Lin Yuan's entourage with his sword in hand. His cold eyes fell on the monk who stopped them. In fact, as the person who slapped the face of the Freedom Courtyard, Lin Yuan was naturally no stranger in the eyes of the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard. However, what kind of juncture was the Freedom Courtyard at this time? 2 of the 3 Kongming realm cultivators in charge were disabled and 1 was injured. At this time, Lin Yuan coming to the Freedom Courtyard was definitely not a good thing. If he took advantage of this opportunity to uproot them, how could they explain? Unlike Hu Yan, who was in a hurry to go up the mountain, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with a cold light. He turned around and rushed towards Shunning City. He didn't realize until now that he had been tricked. It was true that the Church of the Blood God blocked the Freedom Yard that wanted to move out of the northern frontier. However, it was not to force the sects in the northern frontier to stand with them and fight to the death with the northern frontier prince's mansion. Their purpose from the beginning was to attract the attention of Lin Yuan, who had been resting in the northern frontier prince's mansion. Especially after Xia Xiu investigated the Church of the Blood God, he found that there was no one in the gate of the Church of the Blood God. In order to get more information, Lin Yuan could only take people to the Freedom Yard to see if he could get some information from the monks who had fought with the Church of the Blood God. It could be said that the purpose of the Church of the Blood God from fighting to hiding was to lure Lin Yuan to the Freedom Yard. This was a play to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Therefore, the cultivators of the Church of the Blood God had probably entered Shunning City and done whatever they wanted. Lord Shifter Emperor, Hu Yan couldn't care less about showing off his might to the disciples at the gate of the free courtyard. He hurriedly turned around and chased after Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan glanced at Hu Yan, pondered for a moment, and then said indifferently, "I still have some things to deal with. You take some people to the Freedom Courtyard first and see if you can get some information. We can't make this trip in vain." Lei Fan was several levels ahead of Hu Yan in terms of scheming ability and coping ability. Until now, Hu Yan was still thinking about how to get information about the Church of the Divine Blood from the Freedom Courtyard. He had not even thought about the other party's plan, which was to transfer them out of Shunning City from the very beginning. But in the future, Hu Yan still had to carry the banner of the King of the Northern Frontier. Lin Yuan did not want to reveal the reason in front of everyone. He had to save some face for Hu Yan. Yes. Hu Yan cupped his hands towards Lin Yuan and bowed his head in response. Seeing that Hu Yan had accepted the task, Lin Yuan only nodded slightly, then turned and left. After walking for about 300 miles, Lin Yuan suddenly stopped, the coldness in his eyes growing stronger. He lowered his voice and said, "Come out. Do you want this king to drag you out one by one?" As his voice fell, an old man in a green robe walked out from behind a huge tree with his hands behind his back. He looked at the vigilant Lin Yuan and licked his lips. He sneered and said, "Lord Dragon King, my old ancestor invites you to come with me." His gaze paused on the old man for a moment. Lin Yuan suddenly tilted his head and sneered, "Old demon Blood Sea, do you think that the Church of the Blood God has the final say in the northern frontier just because you have dealt a heavy blow to the Freedom Courtyard? Who dares to be so presumptuous in this king's territory? If your old ancestor wants to see me, tell him to come to the northern frontier's royal residence to pay me a visit." Old demon Blood Sea's expression turned cold as he said coldly, "Black Snake, do you really think you are the uncrowned king of the northern frontier after giving you some face? You know nothing of my strength. It is your honor that my old ancestor wants to see you now. If you dare to grumble again, this old man will break your bones and drag you back to the Church of the Blood God." Lin Yuan was silent. Old demon Blood Sea was a void netherworld realm existence after all. Even during the turbulent times in Beijing in the past, the combat strength that old demon Blood Sea displayed could only be ranked at the bottom of the void netherworld realm in the northern frontier. However, after the battle at the Freedom Courtyard, old demon Blood Sea had fought 1 against 3, crippling 2 and injuring 1 out of the 3 masters of the Freedom Courtyard. Just this achievement alone gave old demon Blood Sea the qualifications to look down on the northern frontier. However, it was only looking down on the northern frontier. This was because what he could do, Yan Xingqi could do as well. After leaving the northern frontier, there were as many experts as there were stars in the sky. Otherwise, a mighty figure like the incubus who stood at the pinnacle of the desolate demon realm would not have to be trapped in the Hengduan mountain range. However, listening to old demon Blood River's words, it seemed that he didn't take the unspoken rules of the world seriously at all. To fight Lin Yuan, a monster beast at the Mountain Lord realm, with his Kongming realm cultivation base, not to mention that it would be bad if word got out. Even if it was to prevent those big monster beasts from being provoked, the human side would think of ways to make old demon Blood River pay the corresponding price. Could it be that the grand ancestor that she mentioned could exempt him from the punishment of this rule? A ridiculous thought rose in Lin Yuan's mind. Immediately after, Lin Yuan shook his head with a smile. If the Church of the Blood God really had such a terrifying power, then there should be a true mighty figure that surpassed the void netherworld realm in their sect. They would not be content with the northern frontier. In the world, where could they not display their strength? Black Snake, I advise you not to have any wishful thinking. The grand ancestor of my sect lost his cultivation due to some matters. Now, his cultivation is about the same as yours, a heaven strength realm cultivator. However, with so many methods, killing you is still as easy as flipping his hand. Therefore, even if I attack you, the grand ancestor can say that it was him who did it. Heaven strength realm against a mountain lord. Who can pick a heaven strength realm cultivator? Old demon Blood Sea shook his neck and sneered. Black Snake, if you know what's good for you, then come with me obediently. Otherwise, you will suffer some pain for no reason. I'll say the same thing again. The northern frontier is this king's territory. If your grand ancestor wants to see this king, then tell him to come to the northern frontier king's residence to pay him a visit. This king has a lot of things on hand, so he has no time to mess around with you. Lin Yuan's expression did not change. He moved around old demon Blood Sea and headed in the direction of Shunning City again. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Old demon Blood Sea's expression changed. With a wave of his right hand, a huge hand completely made of blood condensed out of thin air. Then, it directly grabbed at Lin Yuan who was flying. It seemed that he really intended to break the unspoken rule and deal with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, who was flying, turned his head with a mocking look in his eyes. Chapter 393. Clang. A crisp sound reverberated from the forest. Before the huge bloody claw could reach Lin Yuan, a cold light flew over at an even faster speed and instantly pierced through the bloody claw. Then, the bloody claw paused for a moment before it shattered into pieces, turning into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. I was wondering who it was. Is it Zhou Jianxian, who is at the peak of the Heaven Star Border realm? Old demon Blood Sea's move was broken, but he didn't panic at all. There was even a hint of mockery in his eyes. It was as though Xian was just a weak existence that wasn't worth mentioning in his eyes. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. More than 10 disciples of the Church of the Blood God flew out and smashed through several huge trees before they landed. However, when they landed, they were already out of breath and their bodies were distorted. It was obvious that they couldn't be saved. Ao Qian from the West Sea Dragon Palace. Old demon Blood Sea pointed out the identity of the attacker once again and sneered, I didn't even take Zhou Jianxian, who is at the peak of the Heaven Star Border realm, seriously. What's the difference if there's a dragon bloodline demonic beast at the level 4 Mountain Lord realm? However, our Lord Dragon King is quite scheming. He has 2 such hidden guards by his side, and his battle prowess is quite impressive as well. If it weren't for a void realm cultivator, there wouldn't be anyone in the entire north who could do anything to you, right? At this point, he looked at Lin Yuan condescendingly. He licked his lips and sneered, it's a pity that you don't understand how big the gap is between the Heaven Star Border realm and the Kongming realm. Shui Yan and Qin Guanshan walked out and paused on Old Demon Blood Sea for a moment. Then, they cupped their hands at Lin Yuan and said, "Sir Shifter Emperor, when we received the notice from the Association of the Shifter Emperor, we had already left. Now, we're not too late." Old Demon Blood Sea's expression changed slightly when he heard the title of a Shifter Emperor. There was indeed a demon court in ancient times, but the patriarch's cultivation was greatly damaged and he couldn't see Lin Yuan's background at all. He could only roughly deduce that Lin Yuan was indeed related to the existence that established the ancient demon court. Even if it was very weak, it involved the demon court. Even the patriarch had to be careful when dealing with it. Otherwise, without an ancient remnant as a primer, they would have already attacked Lin Yuan, who was suspected of being an ancient remnant. Sir Shifter Emperor, my patriarch has no ill intentions towards you. It's just that this matter is confidential, so I have no choice but to invite you to the sect of the Blood God. I can guarantee that the sect of the Blood God is definitely not an enemy of the demon court. If you're willing to cooperate with us, the Patriarch will naturally give Sir Shifter Emperor a great opportunity. Old Demon Blood Sea's expression turned slightly ugly when he thought of the Patriarch's attitude when he mentioned the ancient demon court. He couldn't even call out the black snake that was at the tip of his tongue. He could only use the title of Shifter Emperor to communicate with Lin Yuan properly. Lin Yuan glanced at Old Demon Blood Sea and said indifferently, "Do you want me to repeat what I said before for the third time?" Lin Yuan was an astute existence. From Old Demon Blood Sea's reaction, he could guess that he and the Patriarch behind him were very afraid of the existence of the ancient demon court. If it was in the past, Lin Yuan would have felt a little guilty. However, after meeting Jinhai in the secret realm and obtaining the things in the palace, Lin Yuan was certain of the existence of the ancient demon court. Even the powerful dragon palace of the Four Seas was just a small branch of the demon court back then. Whether it was Lin Yuan's origin or bloodline, no one could find fault with him claiming to be a member of the demon court. Even if Lin Yuan claimed to be the Shifter Emperor, the remnant forces of the ancient demon court wouldn't feel disgusted. After all, even the ancient demon court had been destroyed. They definitely didn't have the guts to rebuild the demon court. However, if a junior was willing to shoulder the burden, they wouldn't mind showing some goodwill to Lin Yuan. After all, once the demon court became a reality, the remnant forces of the ancient demon court would more or less give him some face. At the very least, it could change the terrible situation of the demonic beasts being reared by humans in the Tianwu continent and slaughtered as livestock. Old Demon Blood Sea choked on Lin Yuan's words. He almost couldn't suppress the coldness in his eyes. He could only say coldly, "Are you determined to embarrass my patriarch?" Seeing that Lin Yuan didn't say anything, Old Demon Blood Sea sneered and said with a gloomy face, "If that's the case, then I can only offend the Lord Shifter Emperor today." Old Demon Blood Sea's evaluation in the Patriarch's heart had dropped a lot since he failed to collect the bloodline of the ancient Demon Blood Sea. If he failed the mission of capturing Lin Yuan, the Patriarch definitely wouldn't be able to kill him with his current cultivation. However, the Patriarch definitely wouldn't pass on the Divine Blood Church's cultivation techniques that had been lost over the years to him. Therefore, his thoughts of breaking through to the Tao accessing realm or even the supremacy realm would naturally become nothing. Everyone's expression didn't look too good. This was because the strongest existence among them was Jiu Jianxian. The rest of them were around level 3 or level 4. It wouldn't be much of a problem for them to deal with the disciples of the Divine Blood Church. However, they didn't see any chance of winning against the Void Realm Old Demon Blood Sea. "If you want to fight, then do it. What's with the chatter?" Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes fell on Old Demon Blood Sea. There wasn't even a trace of emotion in his tone. It was as if the situation was still under his control. After all, until now, he still had a trump card that he hadn't revealed. He used the name of the ancient demon court because he felt that it wasn't worth it to expose his alliance with Yan Xingqi over such a small matter. However, since the Divine Blood Church was so aggressive, he naturally couldn't back down. Old Demon Blood Sea, you better think carefully. If you want to fight, you have to kill us all. However, if I die in this broken place, the northern frontier, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will definitely not let go of your bullshit Divine Blood Church. Under the command of my father, the Dragon Palace of the West Sea will come out in full force. Even the Shinwu dynasty won't dare to stop them. Before Lin Yuan revealed his trump card, Ao Qian's cold voice had already sounded. Everyone, including Lin Yuan, widened their eyes and looked at Ao Qian in disbelief. Although the two missions that Ao Qian had received were easy missions with many merits, Lin Yuan guessed that Ao Qian's identity wasn't simple. However, he didn't expect Ao Qian's father to be the Dragon Lord of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. How tyrannical was the Dragon Lord of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? As long as it was a human empire near the sea, no one would dare to provoke the demon beasts of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Moreover, the Dragon Lord of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea was behind her, the true Dragon King with unfathomable power. Oh my, this background was a little too big. Chapter 394. Hearing Ao Qian's self-introduction, Old Demon Blood Sea's expression became extremely interesting. His eyes paused on Ao Qian for a moment before he sighed faintly and said, Ao Qian, the sect of the Blood God is also a sect that has been passed down since ancient times. Although it has nothing to do with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, my ancestor was not afraid of the Dragon Lord of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas when he was at his peak. Today, I can let you live, but after you leave, you must keep what happened today to yourself. Otherwise, my ancestor will not let you have a good time in the future. The Dragon Clan was an extremely powerful race of demonic beasts. However, because of their terrifying talent and strength, the probability of giving birth to offspring was extremely small. In order to protect the existence of the clan, the Dragon Clan would crazily reproduce. That was why there were so many dragon bloodline demonic beasts. There was even a legend that the Dragon Clan was lustful by nature. But in fact, these problems were only caused by the low fertility of the Dragon Clan. If they did not work hard, the Dragon Clan might even disappear from the world naturally. Even if the Dragon King of the West Sea had more than one child, he would never tolerate Ao Qian dying in the hands of others. If Ao Qian really died in the northern frontier, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, who were closely related to each other, would not sit by and do nothing. By then, the entire northern frontier would be destroyed by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Even if the Shinwu dynasty was dissatisfied, they would not dare to stop the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The Shinwu dynasty could only shamelessly ask for peace with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The Shuangjin and Qingjiang empires were still fighting with the Shinwu dynasty. It was worth mentioning that more than 2 months ago, Lei Chuxing met with the emissaries of the Shuangjin and Qingjiang empires. However, no one knew what the emissaries said to Lei Chuxing. Lei Chuxing directly flew into a rage in the imperial court. He did not even care about the rule of not killing emissaries when two armies were at war. He directly killed the two emissaries on the spot, chopped off their heads, and sent them back to the borders of various empires. The important ministers and nobles in the imperial capital were also silent about this matter. No matter how much effort the Demon Emperor Association used, they could not pry open anyone's mouth. Ao Qian, we don't have to go to this extent, right? Old Demon Blood Sea's tone stiffened. He said helplessly, although this black snake has great potential, it belongs to the Hengduan mountain range. According to my information, Beast Lord Kirin even wants to make it the next Beast Lord. Do you think the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas can still win over this black snake's loyalty? Old Demon Blood Sea was speaking the truth. Lin Yuan's name was well known in the beast world. Let alone the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which was a dragon bloodline beast like Lin Yuan. Even if Beast Lord Kirin went into seclusion and did not come out, the three great beast kings that ruled the Beast Imperial Court on behalf of the Beast King were still trying to get on good terms with Lin Yuan. This was not only because Lin Yuan could bring them great benefits, but also because of the terrifying aptitude that Lin Yuan had displayed. In just over a year, Lin Yuan had grown from a wild beast to a mountain lord. Let alone the demonic beasts that were usually slow in cultivation, even the self-proclaimed spiritualists among the demonic beasts would not be able to compare with Lin Yuan in terms of cultivation speed. It could even be said that as long as Lin Yuan did not die prematurely from some people's wanton attacks or accidents, there would definitely be no problem for him to become the pillar of the beast race in the future. However, Lin Yuan was already tied down by the Hingduan mountain range. The spiritual item business of the northern frontier still required the support of the Hingduan mountain range's demonic beasts. Even the development of the northern frontier could not be done without the protection of the Hingduan mountain range's demonic beasts. The Hingduan mountain range was also willing to pay a heavy price. The news of Lin Yuan as a candidate for the Beast Lord had already spread like wildfire. In addition to Lin Yuan's performance and aptitude, once Lin Yuan had enough influence or strength, he would definitely become the next Beast Lord. What about the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? What could they offer to attract Lin Yuan? Could it be that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which had the existence of true dragons, would allow Lin Yuan, a dragon bloodline beast with a mixed bloodline, to squeeze out those true dragon descendants with noble bloodlines and become the new Dragon King of the Four Seas? Even if the current Dragon King had this idea, those true dragon descendants would not agree, right? In other words, old Demon Blood Sea was reminding Ao Qian not to use the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas' reputation to pressure him because of a demonic beast loyal to the Hingduan mountain range. Otherwise, if they really fell out, the Divine Blood Church would be destroyed. However, on land, the demonic beasts of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would not be able to come and go as freely as they did in the sea. When the time came, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely have to pay a heavy price. What was the point of doing something that would not benefit anyone? Old Demon Blood Sea, we haven't seen each other for a few days, but it feels like 3 years have passed. Master Kuan, who was wearing a yellow monk robe, flew over and looked down at old Demon Blood Sea. The ruthlessness in his eyes became more intense as he coldly said, "Last time, you succeeded in your sneak attack, and I had to split my attention to take care of my 2 senior brothers. Today, you want to attack Lord Dragon King of the Northern Frontier outside my Freedom Courtyard's mountain gate. Do you really think my Freedom Courtyard is easy to bully?" When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Although Master Kuan could not wait for Lin Yuan to die, compared to old Demon Blood Sea, who had crippled 2 of his Freedom Courtyard's legs, the conflict between him and Lin Yuan was insignificant. After all, the Freedom Courtyard was going to move out of the northern frontier. How the northern frontier viewed them and how their reputation looked did not matter. Moreover, if they wanted to leave the northern frontier safely, they had to curry favor with Lin Yuan. If Lin Yuan died near the Freedom Courtyard, who would let them have an easy time in the northern frontier's Wang Mansion and the Demon Emperor's Association? Kuan, if you were in your best condition, would still respect you. However, you have not recovered from your serious injuries, and you still dare to provoke me. Aren't you looking down on me too much? Besides, if I remember correctly, not long ago, your Freedom Courtyard was humiliated by this black snake. Why are you suddenly turning around and acting like this black snake's dog? The Church of the Blood God was an existence that was neither good nor evil in the northern frontier. Usually, they did not get along with the Freedom Courtyard, which considered itself the leader of the righteous path. Ao Qian alone was enough to give old Demon Blood Sea a headache. Now, Kuan from the Freedom Courtyard had come. Old Demon Blood Sea no longer had much hope in taking away Lin Yuan. If it were not for the fact that the situation was still under control and he could still deal with the cultivators who had gathered here because of Lin Yuan, he might have already turned around and left. Forget it. I won't argue with a bald donkey like you. If you have any tricks, just use them. I must take away this black snake today. Whoever dares to stop me will die. Chapter 395. As soon as old demon Bloodsea's voice fell, blood gushed out from all the acupuncture points on his body. In just 2 breaths of time, a sea of blood had already gathered around old demon Bloodsea. Figures completely made of blood crawled out of the sea of blood. When their eyes fell on the crowd, they all rushed towards them like wild dogs that had been let loose. They held weapons made of blood in their hands. However, no one present doubted whether these weapons made of blood had any lethality. Instead, after smelling the almost choking smell of blood, they all covered their mouths and noses and began to retreat tacitly. Jiu Jianxian could break a blood hand, but how could a group of Heaven Dipper realm cultivators like them contend with old demon Bloodsea's all-out attack? Therefore, they didn't even discuss it and directly gave the battlefield to Master Kuan, who came later. Petty tricks are not worth mentioning. Master Kuan didn't retreat. He just waved his hand and golden light suddenly danced from the big sleeve of his yellow monk robe. The golden light fell on the blood people, and the latter immediately convulsed. Then, they turned back into blood and sank into the sea of blood on the ground. In just a moment, Master Kuan had killed thousands of blood people. However, for the sea of blood that was still constantly creating blood people, it was no different from pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Old bald donkey, you've always been at odds with me in the northern region. In the past, I had no choice but to hide my strength in order to protect the ancestor. This time, I'd like to see how you're going to block my attack. After I kill you, old bald donkey, I'll personally go to the Freedom Courtyard and kill all the little bald donkeys in your courtyard one by one. I'll refine all of you into my blood puppets. Old demon Bloodsea's messy hair moved without wind. When his eyes fell on Master Kuan's face, he no longer had the good attitude he had when talking to Lin Yuan. After all, Lin Yuan had the demon court behind him, and Ao Qian had the dragon palace of the 4 seas behind her. They were all existences that the sect of the blood god could not afford to offend. Even if old demon Bloodse was dissatisfied, he could only suppress his temper and have a good chat. However, old demon Bloodse naturally didn't have a good temper when facing his old enemy, Master Kuan. Buddha's illumination. Master Kuan put his palms together and rose into the air. When he disappeared into the clouds, rays of golden light shrouded the blood sea below. The visions released by the 2 Nethervoid realm experts collided and constantly melted each other. For a moment, it was impossible to tell who was at a disadvantage. Whoosh! At this moment, a blood-red whip suddenly extended from the blood sea and went straight for Master Kuan, who was in the air. Master Kuan was still holding his palms together as he looked at old demon Blood River with an indifferent expression. However, no one noticed that just from the collision of the 2 avatars, Master Kuan's forehead was covered with beads of cold sweat the size of soybeans. It was just like when he had been suppressed by the fire Kirin during his battle with the Kirin. In Lin Yuan's impression, this leader of Shi sect, whose name was known throughout the northern frontier, had never won against cultivators or demons of the same level. Every time, he was completely suppressed by his opponent. Lin Yuan, if you have any tricks up your sleeves, use them as soon as possible. This poor monk has yet to recover from his serious injuries. I can only delay him for a while. Master Kuan saw that the blood-red whip was getting closer and closer to him, so he couldn't care less about his demeanor. After all, it wasn't the first time he had been humiliated in front of Lin Yuan. Especially today, Master Kuan had yet to recover from his injuries. In order to protect the black snake, he had hurriedly come here. He didn't expect old demon Blood River to be so decisive. He directly attacked with all his strength, as if he wouldn't give up until he took away Lin Yuan. When Master Kuan's voice fell, a cold light suddenly flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. Immediately after, the blood-red whip that was smashing towards Master Kyoan was instantly frozen and solidified, turning into a blood-red icicle. Then, inch by inch, it shattered into fine powder and slowly fell from the sky. Old Demon Blood River was slightly stunned. Clearly, he didn't expect his attack to be broken so suddenly. His gaze paused on Lin Yuan for a moment. When he saw that the light in Lin Yuan's eyes had dimmed, he sneered, "To be able to break the technique of a Void Realm expert with your cultivation as a Mountain Lord, as expected of the successor of the Demon Court. However, that blood-red whip just now was just a casual attack of mine. Black Snake, even if you can break it, how many times can you break it? This old bald donkey can't delay me for long. The same goes for you." At this point, Old Demon Blood River clenched his hands and growled, "Why do you have to put up a pointless resistance? As long as you follow me back to the sect of the Blood God, I guarantee that the Patriarch won't make things difficult for you." After the Blood Sea Old Demon clenched his fists, the blood around him condensed into two monsters that were more than 300 feet tall. They were as ferocious and tall as Titan gods, and they walked toward Lin Yuan. "Here." Chen Guanshan raised his eyebrows. His body spun rapidly in midair, and the weapon that resembled the Shuangjin dynasty's scimitar left his hand. It flew straight towards Old Demon Blood River's two gigantic blood puppets. Whoosh! The sharp blade destroyed the two blood puppets with irresistible force. However, before it could fly back to Chen Guanshan's hand, the strangely shaped scimitar melted into nothingness in midair. The two blood puppets also condensed from the blood sea when the scimitar melted, appearing in front of everyone once again. "I have to attack his main body." Shui Yan narrowed his eyes slightly and muttered with a solemn expression. If Chen Guanshan's scimitar had not been used as an example, Shui Yan might have already charged forward in an attempt to fight the blood puppets. However, when he thought of the tragic state of the scimitar, Shui Yan still shook his head. From time to time, he would throw out some punches to shatter the blood puppets that approached him. However, his footsteps became more and more frequent. The blood sea around Old Demon Blood River was poisonous. This was something they had thought of from the beginning. However, no one had expected the blood to have such a terrifying corrosive ability. Pu Tao. Jiu Jianxian narrowed his eyes and secretly formed a sword seal with his right hand. In the next moment, a red longsword flew over from afar with a halo trailing behind it. It stabbed straight at Old Demon Blood River, who was standing in the middle of the blood sea. However, Old Demon Blood River only curled his lips in disdain. The blood sea in front of him surged and immediately raised a blood wall in front of him. Jiu Jinshuan's longsword landed on the blood wall but was unable to advance even an inch. It was as though the blood wall was the hardest thing in the world. Jiu Jianxian, who was at the peak of the Heavenly Dipper realm, could easily kill cultivators of the same realm. However, when facing Old Demon Blood River, he was like a helpless child. Chapter 396. Old Demon Blood Sea's power was boundless, directly suppressing the experts on Lin Yuan's side to the point of suffering. From time to time, Chen Guanshan would even glance at Master Kyoan, who was controlling the golden light to clash with Blood Sea. He was secretly wondering if this Buddhist cultivator had used his full strength. Old Demon Blood Sea had been suppressing them as much as he wanted with a stance that could crush everyone. However, Master Kyoan had yet to show any impressive moves up to this point. Master Kyoan also seemed to feel that he was slacking a little too much. His eyes narrowed as he chanted Buddha's name. A golden glaring Vajra image suddenly appeared and fell heavily from the air. The blood puppets on the ground didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. They were pressed back into blood water and fell back into the blood sea. Demon suppression. Master Kyoan had already sat down cross-legged in midair. He put his palms together and closed his eyes. He kept chanting the demon suppression scripture. Golden Sanskrit characters kept condensing around Master Kuan and then imprinting into the Vajra glaring eyes, making the Vajra glaring eyes look even more solid and huge. Moreover, under the suppression of the glaring Vajra form, the boundless sea of blood released by Old Demon Blood Sea began to show signs of flowing backward for the first time. The sea of blood that was spreading in all directions retracted bit by bit towards Old Demon Blood Sea. It was not until now that everyone reacted. It turned out that Master Kuan was not a powerful Buddhist cultivator who could kill demons and exorcise evil in a single blow. This guy's fighting style was just like his name. He had to slowly chant the scripture to gradually show his power. Only then did they understand why the 3 Kongming realm cultivators from the Freedom Compound would be crippled and one heavily injured by Old Demon Blood Sea. It was because Old Demon Blood Sea's combat style restrained them. Before they could finish chanting the sutra, Old Demon Blood Sea had already succeeded in his sneak attack and left. This was probably the reason why Old Demon Blood Sea chose to attack the Freedom Courtyard instead of the Broken Moon House and the Green Lotus Sword sect. Old Demon Blood Sea, who had obediently lowered his head and served as a lackey in the northern region for so many years, naturally knew the fighting style of his sworn enemies the best. Otherwise, he would not have been able to become a void netherworld realm cultivator in Shiolian City who had reached the peak of cultivation on the surface. Blood Demon Protection. Old Bald Donkey, I want to see how you're going to subdue me, the Blood Demon. Seeing that Blood Sea was at a disadvantage, Old Demon Blood Sea decided to stop fighting Master Kuan. The blood and blood water gathered on Old Demon Blood Sea's body, instantly condensing into an extremely grotesque armor. However, Old Demon Blood Sea transformed into a sanguine beam as he charged straight for the glowering Vajra. The blood-red light flashed across the glaring Vajra statue, and in the next moment, the glaring Vajra statue collapsed. Master Kuan, who was in the sky, finally could not hold his breath and directly fell down. I'll kill you first. Old Demon Blood Sea roared as he watched Master Kuan fall continuously. He really couldn't touch Lin Yuan and Ao Qian. He had been suppressing his anger for a long time, so he simply vented it all on Master Kuan at this moment. His actions were also incomparably ruthless. Senior, please make a move. Following closely was Lin Yuan's voice. Whoosh! In the next moment, a silver light flew out from the forest and directly hit Old Demon Blood Sea, who had just left his territory and leaped toward Master Kuan. Boom! A muffled sound was heard. Old Demon Blood Sea was unable to dodge in time. He was sent flying to the side by the silver beam of light. After smashing through more than 10 huge trees, he slammed heavily into a mountain wall and slowly slid to the ground. Yan Xingqi walked out of the forest expressionlessly. When his gaze landed on Old Demon Blood Sea, a look of contempt flashed across his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "If I wasn't still alive, I would have thought that there was no one in the northern frontier. How could I tolerate a piece of trash like you jumping around for so long? So you've been hiding your cultivation all these years." Speaking of this, Yan Xingqi gently clapped his hands and said contemptuously, "But that's all. A piece of trash is still a piece of trash. There's no difference." Old Demon Blood Sea's figure had just landed on the ground when he pulled out the silver halberd that was nailed into his shoulder. He growled at Yan Xingqi, "Yan Xingqi, why does everything have to do with you? What does my conflict with the Freedom Courtyard have to do with you, the guardian of the northern frontier?" Although Old Demon Blood Sea's tone was firm, when Master Kuan appeared, Old Demon Blood Sea did not even hesitate to attack Master Kuan. Now that he was hit by Yan Xingqi's sneak attack, he could only show off his might verbally. From this, it could be seen that Old Demon Blood Sea was still quite afraid of Yan Xingqi. "Of course, your conflict with the Freedom Courtyard has nothing to do with me. But you attacking Master Dragon King has a lot to do with me. Why, is the Church of the Blood Divine so ill-informed that you don't even know that I'm now the chief guest of the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion? If you take Master Dragon King away, who will give me my salary? Yan Xingqi crossed his arms in front of his chest and walked towards the mountain wall where old demon blood sea was. He waved his hand in the air and caught the falling Master Kuan. Then, he threw Master Kuan onto a rock to rest. From the beginning to the end, Yan Xingqi did not stop walking. Storing power. Zhou Jianxian narrowed his eyes and said slowly. As a former royal of the Wanjian dynasty, Zhou Jianxian had some understanding of this famous general of the dynasty. Before the change of dynasty, Yan Xingqi had the combat power to walk from the military camp to the front of the enemy's formation. He then casually killed the enemy's general before turning back to the camp. Storing power was Yan Xingqi's killer move. With every step he took, the aura around his body grew heavier. Under the pressure of this aura, it would be extremely difficult for his opponent to even move. When Yan Xingqi made his move, his strength and aura would be intertwined together. Without one or two life-saving methods, it would be very difficult to withstand Yan Xingqi's attack that had been accumulated to its peak. In addition, Yan Xingqi's aura was invincible. He had only lost once in his life. He lost to Lei Qiuxing in the speed of returning to the imperial capital. When he arrived at the imperial capital, the Wanjian dynasty had already changed hands. Under the pressure of Lei Qiuxing, Zhu Xinghai had already drafted the letter of succession. Therefore, Yan Xingqi was sent to the bitter cold land of the northern frontier. He had been in seclusion for dozens of years. If it wasn't for Lin Yuan's sudden appearance, this northern frontier guardian might have been buried in the northern frontier. Chapter 397. Stomp, 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 Yan Xingqi approached Old Demon Blood River step by step. His cold eyes were filled with killing intent. Now that the northern frontier was under Lin Yuan's rule, everything was progressing in an orderly manner. If anyone wanted to stir up trouble in the northern frontier at this time, old General Yan would kill them regardless of whether they were human or ghost. Yan Xingqi, you dare to kill me. Seeing that Yan Xingqi was getting closer and closer to him, the Blood Sea demon also lost his initial arrogance. His face was ashen as he looked at Yan Xingqi, whose killing intent was getting stronger and stronger. His facial features became distorted and ferocious, as if he didn't believe that Yan Xingqi, who had been guarding the northern region for many years and hated demonic beasts, would kill him for Lin Yuan. Yan Xingqi narrowed his eyes slightly. His footsteps were still as steady as ever. With a gentle wave of his right hand, the silver halberd that Old Demon Blood River had thrown to the side turned into a silver stream of light and returned to Yan Xingqi's hand. Old Demon Blood River's ferocious blood armor made of blood was not weak. Even Master Kuan's glaring Vajra form, which he condensed after abandoning his own defense, was destroyed by the blood armor. However, after being hit by Yan Xingqi's halberd, the blood armor was already in tatters. It was as if it would turn back into blood and flow away from his body at any time. Holding the halberd, Yan Xingqi walked up to Old Demon Blood River and sneered, "I'm curious. Why don't I dare to kill you? Because you're ugly, or because you're weak? If you dare to touch me, my patriarch will not let you go." Old Demon Blood Sea tried to struggle, but he was unable to move under the pressure of Yan Xingqi's aura. All he could do was roar at Yan Xingqi. However, anyone could tell that Old Demon Blood Sea was terrified to the extreme. After all, when Yan Xingqi was still serving the 10,000 Sword Dynasty, he was known for his massacre. From the nobles to the commoners, there was no existence that Yan Xingqi did not dare to kill. Especially someone like Old Demon Blood River, who knew what Yan Xingqi hated the most but still did it anyway. As long as he fell into Yan Xingqi's hands, nothing good would come out of it. "You're almost 100 years old, yet you keep calling me ancestor. Aren't you ashamed?" Yan Xingqi frowned slightly and said with a cold face, "Let's not talk about the origin of your ancestor. Even if he is the reincarnation of the founder of the sect of the Blood God, he should start all over again. Not everyone can avoid the heavenly way. Besides, even if he has the ability to avoid the heavenly way, he should learn to be a human when he reaches the northern frontier. To me, the dragon has to coil and the tiger has to hold. Looking at old demon Blood River, who had curled up into a ball and was shivering, Yan Xingqi lowered his eyes. Suddenly, he no longer had any killing intent. He felt that killing old demon Blood Sea in such a state was equivalent to dirtying his hands. However, Yan Xingqi was a little interested in the ancestor that old demon Blood River mentioned. After all, no matter how weak he was, his Kongming realm cultivation was still there. Not to mention the northern frontier, even in the entire Shenwu dynasty, old demon Blood River's talent and temperament should be among the best. What was the origin of this ancestor? How could he play old demon Blood River in the palm of his hand? He could even make old demon Blood River violate some taboos to do things for him. Until now, old demon Blood River was still stubbornly mentioning his ancestor. It was as if Yan Xingqi was nothing in the eyes of this ancestor. It's just a bluff. Lin Yuan's voice slowly sounded. He said with a calm expression, if the ancestor behind him really has the ability to reach the heavens, why would he need to scheme in the dark? Looking at the history of the northern region over the past few decades, although the northern region now has the most potential, it is also the weakest. Look at this old thing. That nuisance of an ancestor has probably been by his side for a long time, but even now, he still doesn't dare to directly attack. This indirectly proves that the other party is incomparably weak at the moment. Old demon Blood River previously said that his ancestor's cultivation was damaged and he was only in the Heaven Star Border realm. Although there weren't many Heaven Star Border realm cultivators in the world, they were definitely not rare. However, all the famous forces in the pugilistic world basically had a few Heaven Star Border realm cultivators in charge. In the southern region of the Shenwu dynasty, only Heaven Star Border realm cultivators had the qualifications to join the government offices in places larger than county towns and villages. Therefore, although Lin Yuan set up the southern expedition, he didn't have any plans to go down south. Firstly, the foundation of the northern frontier hadn't been set up properly. There were many things waiting to be done, and the various industries had just started to reform. If he continued to expand his territory, it would mean that Lin Yuan would need more resources to invest. This would make the northern frontier prince's residence, which wasn't rich to begin with, even worse. Secondly, if he wanted to take over the territory in the south, with the current combat strength of the northern frontier, it was a complete joke. Even after rummaging through the entire northern frontier, the prince's residence and the association of the Demon Emperor couldn't gather a set of Heaven Star Border realm cultivators. Although they occupied a large territory, Lin Yuan's actual strength in the northern frontier wasn't much stronger than the aristocratic families. It was only because he had the banner of the Shenwu dynasty that the sects in the northern frontier admitted defeat and didn't dare to go head-to-head with Lin Yuan. However, it was precisely under such circumstances that the old ancestor behind old demon Blood Sea wanted to scheme against Lin Yuan while hiding himself in the dark, leaving all the errands to old demon Blood Sea. If it wasn't because this so-called old ancestor was too weak, then there must be some unspeakable reason behind it. Let me ask you a question. Lin Yuan wriggled his body to old demon Blood Sea's side and said indifferently, "Is your old ancestor a cripple? Does he let you do everything? You keep talking about how your ancestor is, as if we're all chickens and dogs that can't be brought to the table. Then, what about your ancestor?" This, old demon Blood Sea was slightly taken aback. Clearly, he hadn't caught up with Lin Yuan's train of thought, but he still subconsciously said, "My old ancestor has other plans. How can ordinary people like you understand? As the old ancestor's lackey, it's my duty to be busy for him. Black Snake, my old ancestor is giving the demon court some face by letting me come and have a discussion with you. How dare you insult my old ancestor?" Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and said contemptuously, "Isn't your old ancestor still waiting for this king at the Blood God Sect's mountain gate with great arrogance? Don't tell me your old ancestor has a bunch of lackeys like you. TSK, TSK, TSK. It seems like your position isn't very stable. Chapter 398. Old Demon Blood Sea's face turned red, but he didn't say a word. He turned his head to the side, as if he was at Lin Yuan's disposal. Shen Guanshan sneered and said in a deep voice, "It seems that this guy is quite loyal to his old ancestor." No. Lin Yuan cast a sidelong glance at the blood demon old ancestor and said indifferently, "If this guy is loyal to his old ancestor, he wouldn't talk about the old ancestor hiding behind the scenes. Compared to loyalty, their relationship is more like mine and the association of the demon emperor. They want to get something from me, so they are loyal to me. Once I don't have enough things to feed the wolves of the association of the demon emperor, they will swarm me and swallow me whole." Speaking of this, Lin Yuan paused and deliberated for a moment before continuing. "He is stubborn now only because he has a grudge against us. If he has the information we want to know, although he will suffer a little, he won't immediately lose his life. Maybe things will take a turn for the better." Few cultivators who could reach the Kongming realm were fools. Old Demon Blood Sea had endured in the northern frontier for so many years without revealing anything, so he wouldn't be so arrogant now. If it wasn't for the fact that he was facing Lin Yuan, the Blackwater Dragon King, who had never been defeated since he was born, Old Demon Blood Sea wouldn't be so arrogant. He kept talking about the old ancestor, but in fact, it was a performance of a guilty conscience. Once he couldn't beat Lin Yuan's arrangement, he could use the old ancestor's secret to exchange for enough time and a chance to live. Jiu Jianxian took off the wine gourd at his waist and took a sip. He flicked his fingertips, and 12 flying swords shuttled back and forth in the forest, killing the disciples of the Church of the Blood God brought by Old Demon Blood Sea one by one. After confirming that there were no more survivors, Jiu Jianxian sheathed his sword and drank all the wine in the gourd. He said in a deep voice, "If the Demon Emperor has no other orders, this old man will go back to get more wine." Jiu Jianxian was silent for a moment. Seeing that Lin Yuan didn't say anything, he tied the gourd to his waist again, and then flew up on his sword, flying in the direction of Shunning City. "Kid, don't you think that the members of the Association of the Demon Emperor under your command have been a little strange recently? I don't know what they are busy with mysteriously, and even the supervision of the northern frontier has slackened a little." Yan Xingqi's SSS side's attention. The Association of the Demon Emperor was quite strange recently. Every move of the Church of the Blood God should be under the control of the Association of the Demon Emperor. Yan Xingqi used his authority in the northern frontier to check the recent reports about the Church of the Blood God. About half a month ago, the spies who infiltrated the Church of the Blood God had lost contact. There was no news sent back, and there was no contact with the members of the Association of the Demon Emperor. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. However, the Association of the Demon Emperor didn't seem to think that this was inappropriate. This also meant that the Association of the Demon Emperor didn't know what the Church of the Blood God had done in the past half a month, let alone the others. Otherwise, Lin Yuan wouldn't have been transferred to the mountain gate of the Freedom Yard and killed by Old Demon Blood Sea today. Although he didn't have any intention of controlling the Association of the Demon Emperor, as a former general, Yan Xingqi knew very well that when two armies were at war, the most important thing was food and fodder, and the second most important thing was information. Now, they had been blinded by the enemy before the war had even begun. If Lin Yuan hadn't been cautious and had been kidnapped by Old Demon Blood Sea, who knew what would have happened? Moreover, there was no information for half a month. Did no one feel that something was wrong, and no one reported it? Did they just let the Association of the Demon Emperor shelve the intelligence work of the Church of the Blood God? It's more than a little strange. It's just that I don't have any evidence, so I can't do anything to him. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he murmured, "I hope it's not what I've guessed." Otherwise, there will be internal turmoil in the association of the demon emperor. Let's see how it goes first. Seeing that Lin Yuan already had some speculations, Yan Xingqi didn't say anything else. He knew that the two were currently in a cooperative relationship, and cooperation was cooperation. If one party interfered too much with the other party's affairs, it would undoubtedly make the other party unhappy. Just like how Lin Yuan never asked how Yan Xingqi could help him stabilize his rule in the northern frontier, Yan Xingqi only gave Lin Yuan a small reminder. Clap! Clap! Yan Xingqi suddenly clapped his hands. Immediately, from the forest he walked out of, a middle-aged man with a determined expression and wheat-colored skin, and a young man with a jade-like face and starry eyes slowly walked out. The middle-aged man was wearing a silver armor, and his hair was shaved very short. Compared to his bald head, he only had a little stubble. The young man was wearing a blue brocade robe. Although Lin Yuan had never seen him before, his slightly drooping triangular eyes were emitting a gloomy aura. The one wearing the armor is my old subordinate, Gao Buzhen. The young man is the son of another old subordinate, Li Zhong. He also has a younger brother named Li Axan, but his younger brother is still studying and can't come to the northern frontier. When they came, they also brought you a flag and 5,000 of my old subordinates. Yan Xingqi waved his hand. Gao Buzhen immediately strode forward to Lin Yuan, reached out his hand and pulled out a flag with white characters on a green background and handed it to Lin Yuan. He said in a deep voice, "The champion of the original Fallen Star Army, Gao Buzhen, reports to Lord Dragon King." This, Lin Yuan looked at Yan Xingqi and said in a deep voice, "Senior, isn't this too expensive?" The Fallen Star Army was the designation of Yan Xingqi's old army. Together with Lei Qiuxing's Black Thunder Army, they were known as the Two Blades of the Wangjian dynasty. Since the day this army was established, it had never lost a battle. Even after Lei Qiuxing seized the throne, he was not willing to disband this army. Instead, he transferred the members of the Fallen Star Army to different armies. Today, at least one-third of the instructors in the Shenlin Jun dynasty came from the old Fallen Star Army. And because these old Fallen Star Army had a certain amount of authority in the military of the Shenwu dynasty, the designation and organization of the Fallen Star Army were still preserved. However, whether it was the recruitment of soldiers or the upgrading of equipment, the Fallen Star Army would not only recruit 5,000 people. When I gave this army to Lei Qiuxing, he only used it as a spiritual sustenance to appease the old brothers who left the Fallen Star Army. Ask yourself, in today's Shenwu dynasty, how many people still remember the name of the Fallen Star Army? Yan Xingqi sneered and said coldly, "The few empires around us can still stop their children from crying at night when they talk about the Fallen Star Army. But in our country, we have completely forgotten about this heroic army, which has sacrificed so much for our country." Chapter 399. Although Yan Xingqi only gave Lin Yuan 5,000 soldiers, it was indeed a generous gift. With the designation of the Fallen Star Army, the army of the northern frontier would be completely integrated into the system of the Shenwu dynasty. In this way, even if someone wanted to reach into the northern frontier, they would have to consider whether the Ministry of War, Shenlin Jun, and the old Fallen Star Army soldiers in the imperial capital would be willing or not. Just by sending this flag to the northern frontier, Lin Yuan would have a considerable say in the civil and military system of the Shenwu dynasty. During this period of time, Yan Xingqi had been running around. He only had some free time in the past few days. It was probably because of this. If it was a peaceful era or the turmoil was about to be quelled, Lei Qiuxing, who was not muddle-headed, would never send the flag and designation of the Fallen Star Army to Lin Yuan even if he angered Yan Xingqi's old subordinates. But now, although the Shenwu dynasty's internal and external troubles were gradually calming down, it would still take a long time for the chaos to be completely quelled. In addition, Lin Yuan had set up a new southern expedition in the northern frontier. When Lei Chouxing was considering how to deal with the northern frontier, he had to think about it. Now that the northern frontier was in a full-scale war with him, the army of the northern frontier, the Hingduan mountain range, and even the demonic beasts of the dragon palace of the four seas would come back. The two empires that had just shed all pretense of cordiality not long ago would not let go of this opportunity and wanted to bite off a piece of meat from him. Also, those aristocratic families and powerful families in the south who were watching from the sidelines, as well as the various rebel forces in the Shenwu dynasty, would not miss this carnival. At that time, all the efforts of the Shenwu dynasty during this period of time would be in vain. It was even possible that the Shenwu dynasty would perish because of this. In addition to this designation, Gao Buzhan was also a powerful figure. Not everyone could be the champion general of the Shenwu dynasty. Only those who were the most courageous could be qualified to be the champion general. In the past, the fallen star army led by Yan Xingqi made the nearby empires cry for their parents. Even the demonic beasts in the Hingduan mountain range didn't dare to compete with them. It was enough to show how elite the fallen star army was and how valuable the champion general Gao Buzhan was. Gao Buzhan was a martial artist. When he saw Lin Yuan's gaze fall on him, he slightly lowered his head and didn't take the opportunity to show off. In addition to his calm personality, it was more important that Gao Buzhan came to the northern frontier to give face to his old superior, Lin Yuan. As a demonic beast, Lin Yuan wasn't very likable. If Li Zhong's strategy was nonsense without any merit, Lin Yuan wouldn't mind making him pay the price. Presumably, Li Zhong had a certain degree of confidence in speaking up at this time. Therefore, Lin Yuan really wanted to hear Li Zhong's thoughts. According to what I know, Dragon King has recently defeated the sects in the northern frontier. However, he didn't have any good plans for the division of the sects' businesses. He just handed them over to the advisors in the northern frontier. Dragon King's actions saved him a lot of trouble. However, it is still unknown how much wealth went into the pockets of those who handled the businesses. Although I have observed the style of Dragon King's orders, after defeating the sects, it would be the aristocratic family's turn. After that, the squires and tyrants in various places wouldn't be able to escape. However, I don't think Lord Dragon King needs to make more enemies for himself. First, he needs to restrain those who handle the sect's businesses. Second, it's time for Lord Dragon King to show his edge. Li Zhong's eyes suddenly lit up with a cold light. He said in a deep voice, "Since the sects in the northern frontier fell, only the Divine Blood Church dares to challenge the northern frontier mansion. The rest of the sects have either been wiped out or are selling their businesses and preparing to move out of the northern frontier. The money of the mansion of the northern frontier mansion is used to maintain the development and construction of the northern frontier. Therefore, they didn't participate in the purchase of these sects' businesses. However, those aristocratic families are taking advantage of this opportunity to eat until their mouths are dripping with oil." Interesting. Lin Yuan smiled and didn't interrupt Li Zhong. Instead, he continued to ask, "Then, in your opinion, how should this king show his edge?" To be addressed as "Sir" meant that his words had attracted the attention of the ruler of the northern frontier. Li Zhong was secretly delighted. However, soon, Li Zhong adjusted his emotions and stared at Lin Yuan. Chapter 400. This student believes that if we want to progress further in the northern frontier, we must get rid of the constraints of the sects and aristocratic families. Now that Lord Dragon King has defeated the sects, it will be easy to deal with the aristocratic families next. This is because the aristocratic families don't have any decent legacies, and they don't have the qualifications to open their doors and accept disciples. Although they can hire a lot of servants and guards, they are all exchanged with money, food, and spirit items. If this benefit is cut off, the aristocratic families will instantly become tigers without teeth. The aristocratic family's money, food, and spirit items all come from business, lending, and annexing farmland. This student has observed the Dragon King's previous actions, and it seems that he doesn't want to completely eradicate the aristocratic families. Therefore, after much consideration, I believe that Lord Dragon King must increase the aristocratic family's income in the business field, and at the same time, take back the land they have annexed to the northern frontier. This student doesn't dare to embarrass himself in front of Lord Dragon King when it comes to business, but this student still has some confidence in taking back the land in the aristocratic family's hands. Lord Dragon King can first start the preliminary officials and civilians to reduce the income the aristocratic families can bring in from farming. Now that the northern frontier's business is unprecedentedly developed, the aristocratic families won't fall out with Lord Dragon King over such a small matter. Therefore, this move can be very stable. Li Zhong spoke very slowly, clearly giving Lin Yuan enough time to think. The northern frontier's aristocratic families might have a lot of land in their hands, but that was only for the original 7 cities in the northern frontier. While Lin Yuan was expanding the gathering place, he had planned a series of buildings such as residential areas and business areas. He had even allocated farmland to every household. However, these deeds were still in the hands of the northern frontier's royal residents and were only leased to the citizens. Within 3 years, the northern frontier's harvest would increase by at least 10 times. However, this money and food would enter the pockets of the royal residents in the northern frontier. It had nothing to do with the aristocratic families in the northern frontier. They still had their own land, and some wealthy aristocratic families would purchase some properties from the northern frontier's sects. In addition, when Lin Yuan had just taken over the northern frontier, he had single-handedly controlled the Fey trading operation. It could be said to be a stroke of genius. The assets that the northern frontier's aristocratic families had accumulated over the past 10 years were almost all in Lin Yuan's hands. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the funds to start a series of reforms in the northern frontier. Although he was still struggling to make ends meet, he could at least put the northern frontier on the right track. Compared to Lin Yuan's great situation, the northern frontier's aristocratic families weren't having such a good time. Just by relying on the lands in their hands, they would need to accumulate for 10 years under favorable weather conditions before they could earn back the money that they had invested. However, if they ran a few business deals in the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, they could even make up for half a year's income. According to the original laws of the Shenwu dynasty, humans were divided into different levels. If someone was an official, in the military, and had a certain amount of influence, the taxes that they paid to the empire would be reduced accordingly. This was a strategy to recruit talents for the empire, but at the same time, it was also a strategy to weaken the imperial power. Once a family produced a high-ranking official or great general, the people in the vicinity would think of ways to get close to that person. This was also how the aristocratic families first annexed lands. Later on, after the family had a certain amount of capital, they would go through some shady transactions. These aristocratic families would often have a nominal official title. Although they didn't have any real power, they still had the convenience of reducing taxes. This was considered a vicious cycle. After all, when there were too many aristocratic families and the empire didn't have enough money to operate, they had no choice but to sell their official titles in exchange for money and food. These sold official titles would then create a batch of aristocratic families, causing the empire's income to be even lower in the coming year. Li Zhong's officials and citizens referred to making the officials and military personnel pay the same taxes as the commoners. Although this method wouldn't directly reduce the land annexed by the aristocratic families, the annual taxes paid by the aristocratic families would be greatly increased. Furthermore, the nearby farmers wouldn't try to seek refuge with the aristocratic families. If it was in other places, Li Zhong's strategy obviously wouldn't work. This was because the officials and military personnel wouldn't be exempted from taxes and would be under the jurisdiction of the higher-ups. It would be very uncomfortable and a large number of talents would be lost. However, it was different in the northern frontier. With the existence of the Northern Frontier Academy, Lin Yuan didn't have to worry about not being able to discover talents. In addition, the aristocratic families in other places would definitely oppose the implementation of this decree. However, it was different in the northern frontier. Right now, the majority of the profits in the northern frontier were in Lin Yuan's personal handling of the Fey trade. Whether the Fey, demonic beast flesh, and even Fey cores in the Hingduan mountain range could enter the northern frontier depended entirely on Lin Yuan's intentions. Compared to this huge profit, the aristocratic families wouldn't value the profits that farming could bring. Li Zhong's plan was like boiling the frog in warm water. When the aristocratic families completely lost interest in farming, the northern frontier prince's residents would no longer face any resistance if they wanted to take back the northern frontier's land and turn these aristocratic families from powerful clans into existences that relied on the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce to survive. Although he hadn't communicated with Li Zhong before, Li Zhong was able to come up with this plan. Furthermore, it perfectly fit Lin Yuan's idea of not forcing the aristocratic families to be eradicated, but to let the aristocratic families fall into his control. This son of Yan Xingqi's old subordinate was really something. This is really interesting, but, Lin Yuan smiled and said in a deep voice, for the aristocratic families to be able to survive until today, they aren't all short-sighted. If you implement this plan, they will think of ways to find loopholes. If they really can't find any loopholes, they will kill you, the person who is implementing this new policy, and use this to intimidate others who want to implement this policy. Li Zhong smiled faintly and bowed. To be able to achieve great things, this student isn't afraid of death. Dragon King's lesson is right. Those aristocratic families will definitely find loopholes in this plan. Therefore, this student begs Lord Dragon King to let this student be personally in charge of this matter, so that the plan can be modified at any time. Hearing this, Li Zhong knew that his position in the northern frontier was stable. At least in the circle of the northern frontier prince's residence, with Lin Yuan supporting him, he would have a certain amount of authority. Then you will be in charge. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and slowly said, the northern frontier currently has 3 armies, the Northern Battlefront Army, the Southern Expedition Army, and the Northern Frontier Prince's Residence Guards. If we suddenly add the Fallen Star Army, first, it will make people wary. Second, the Northern Frontier really doesn't have enough manpower to expand the army. Therefore, I'll have to trouble Senior Gao and your brothers to protect Li Zhong for a while. Let him smoothly implement the new policy under the pressure of the aristocratic families in the northern frontier. Understood. Gao Chuanjun cupped his fist at Lin Yuan and responded in a muffled voice. Chapter 401. News in the northern frontier had always spread very quickly, especially now that the Shifter the Arch Association was acting as an information broker. Even if it was internal information, as long as Lin Yuan didn't explicitly state that it was strictly confidential, the Shifter the Arch Association would sell it to you as long as you could afford the price. Therefore, a new Mr. came to the Northern Frontier Prince's residence. Furthermore, he had just joined the Northern Frontier Prince's residence and was already in charge of the Land Clearance Project. The so-called Land Clearance Project was to strictly calculate how much land there was in the northern frontier based on the original land area of the Shenwu dynasty, who the land belonged to, and how much food and spiritual items could be produced annually. Although this young man named Li Axayan had yet to officially start his work, just based on the project he was in charge of, it was enough for the aristocratic families in the northern frontier to establish him as their #1 enemy. Almost every day and night, there would be people waiting near the northern frontier prince's residence, wanting to see how this Mr. Li looked like. At the same time, they wanted to find out if the land clearance project had started. Did it mean that after Lin Yuan dealt with the sects, he was going to make an example out of the aristocratic families? Back then, when the sects were suppressed by Lin Yuan, the aristocratic families all watched from the sidelines and even wantonly took over the benefits that the sects were supposed to get. However, no one would have thought that the sects in the northern frontier were actually so weak. When Lei Fan led the Northern Frontier Prince's residence and the Shifter the Arch Association to clean up the sects in the Northern Frontier, none of the top sects had any intention of lending a helping hand. After all, from their point of view, this Lei Fan had just taken over the Northern Frontier and wanted to kill a bunch of fat sheep to fill his pockets. It was only until the Flying Sun Pavilion fell that the top sects panicked and went to seek the protection of the Freedom Courtyard. However, under Lin Yuan's operation, not only did the Freedom Courtyard fail to protect these sects, they even got themselves into trouble and almost got involved in the conflict between the sects and the aristocratic families. It was also after that time that everyone knew that even a first-rate organization with a void netherworld cultivator could forget about protecting anyone that Lin Yuan wanted. So today, the sects of the Northern Frontier had completely given up on competing with Lin Yuan. Taking advantage of the fact that Lin Yuan had yet to think about their heads, they all sold off their properties and prepared to move to the south. Only the Divine Blood Church still braced themselves to challenge the Wang Mansion of the Northern Frontier. Although they didn't openly rebel, the Church of the Blood God had blocked the Repose Courtyard, which was planning to leave the Northern Frontier. As a result, 2 of the Repose Courtyard's Kongming realm experts were crippled and injured. This was news that everyone knew. Now, the trouble of the Divine Blood Church had not been dealt with yet, but the new government order to clear the land had been issued from the Northern Frontier Wang Mansion, and it was under the charge of a guy they had never heard of or seen before. Clearly, he didn't plan to show mercy to anyone. This made many cultivators from aristocratic families faintly feel that something was wrong. After all, they had eaten and seen before. There had been rumors in the Northern Frontier that after Lin Yuan cleaned up the sects, the next step would be to clean up the aristocratic families. It was just that no one took these words seriously. After all, the sects were considered private armed forces and first-rate gangs in the martial arts world. Of course, they could intimidate a small group of people and maintain the peace of a certain region in the northern region. However, the Northern Battlefront Army could also do the same thing. The existence of these private armed forces was not of help to Lin Yuan. Instead, they were hidden dangers and threats. Being eradicated by a ruler with a strong desire for control was the fate that all private armed forces had to face. However, aristocratic families were different. They weren't private armed forces. Most aristocratic families in the Northern Frontier had a certain amount of Northern Frontier government offices in the Northern Frontier. For example, the former mayor of Shunning City, who was now the king of the Northern Frontier, Hu Yan, was the current leader of the Hu family. In fact, there were many similar people, but they might not have a higher position than Hu Yan. After all, before the Northern Frontier Academy was officially taught, learning to read and write was basically the privilege of aristocratic families. Even cultivation was not something that ordinary people could afford. Just a spiritual item alone was a number that many families couldn't get even if they sold everything they had. Therefore, before the arrival of Lin Yuan's new era, whether it was cultivators or officials, they all came from aristocratic families. It was because of these people that Lin Yuan could carry out his orders and carry them out everywhere in the Northern Frontier. If Lin Yuan wanted to touch the aristocratic families, it was equal to shaking his rule. This was recognized by everyone. Therefore, the aristocratic families didn't take these words seriously from the beginning. Even if they heard it from others, they just thought it was a rumor spread by the sects to drag the aristocratic families down with them to fight against Lin Yuan. However, at this moment, when Lin Yuan really showed signs of taking action, they suddenly realized that they couldn't find any help at all. They could only rely on themselves to face the coming storm. According to the intelligence of the Demon Emperor Association, today was the day that Li Zhong would enter the city. Countless children of aristocratic families went to the streets one after another. They wanted to see where this mysterious person came from, but who could represent Lin Yuan to compete with these aristocratic families. Soon, they saw the figures of Li Zhong and his companions. Li Zhong, who was in the lead, was riding a white steed with soft hair. He was wearing a moon-white brocade robe decorated with ink patterns and a black fox fur cloak on his back. Behind him, there were 5,000 soldiers of the Falling Star Army in silver armor. As they galloped, the red cloaks on their backs were like blood flags swaying in the wind. The cities on the northern frontier didn't have city walls. Therefore, Li Zhong and his companions, who had come from afar, didn't intend to stop at all. They directly galloped toward the prince's mansion on the northern frontier. A group of aristocratic family's disciples, who had been waiting on the street for a long time, heard the rumbling sound of horse hooves gradually fading away before they could see the leader's appearance clearly. Who the hell is this person? Why did he lead an army to take office? A disciple from an aristocratic family murmured, his face full of disbelief. The northern frontier supervised the military system very strictly. In the past, the Castellans still had the right to lead the army. However, since the Northern Frontier Guard Army was divided into two armies, one was controlled by Zhang Qilin and the other by Li Zhongxing. Except for the orders of Lin Yuan, Hu Yan, and the two corps commanders, no one else could command the army of the Northern Frontier. Even the generals and colonels in the army were absolutely forbidden to use private troops. Those who violated the law would be stripped of their military status and banished from the country at the very least. This newcomer to the prince's mansion on the northern frontier hadn't even met the local big families in Shunning City, but he had already shown them his power. 5,000 cavalrymen swaggered through the streets. With this privilege, no one would take any chances. Chapter 402. In the mansion of the Prince of the Northern Frontier. Li Zhong dismounted from his horse and gestured to the 5,000 fallen star soldiers behind him. The soldiers immediately pulled the reins and stopped their horses outside the mansion of the Prince of the Northern Frontier. However, the soldiers on the horses all had their hands on the sabers at their waists. It seemed that they would turn into killing machines if they sensed something wrong. Putting away the horsewhip, Li Zhong handed his name card to the guards of the Northern Territory Prince's mansion. The guards already knew that a big shot recognized by Lin Yuan would join the Northern Territory Prince's mansion today. In addition, the scene of the other party leading 5,000 knights was too visually impactful. Therefore, the four guards looked at each other. No one dared to put on the airs of the Northern Territory Prince's mansion and let Li Zhong stand outside the door and wait for Hu Yan to summon him. After looking at each other for a while, they tacitly made way for him. The leader of the guard smiled apologetically and said, "Mr. Li is coming to the mansion to report today. This is what His Excellency the Dragon King has told us. Naturally, you don't have to go through the unnecessary procedures. However, if Mr. Li can go in, these brothers outside." Li Zhong didn't put on airs. He just waved his hand with a smile and said in a deep voice, "It doesn't matter. I'm just here to greet His Highness and will leave soon. If I offend you, please forgive me." Seeing that Li Zhong did not have any intention of sending soldiers into the mansion to intimidate the officials and advisors on the first day of his appointment, the guard let out a sigh of relief. He smiled obsequiously as he led the way for Li Zhong. After passing through the front yard, Li Zhong successfully arrived at the courtyard where Hu Yan was currently living. Li Zhong's eyes paused for a moment on the middle-aged man who was reading an ancient book in the courtyard. He took 2 steps forward, bowed to Hu Yan, and said loudly, "I'm Li Zhong. I'm here to report to the mansion of the Northern Frontier on the order of His Excellency the Dragon King. If Your Highness needs anything in the future, please don't hesitate to tell me." Hu Yan smiled and helped Li Zhong up. He said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite. We're all working for the Demon Emperor. Although I'm the king of the Northern Frontier, I'm no different from a steward. I should thank Mr. Li for coming to the mansion of the Northern Frontier to share a series of work. I've already booked a banquet in Spring Full Restaurant. I hope Mr. Li will do me the honor of welcoming you." The expression on Li Zhong's face stiffened slightly. Obviously, he realized that the banquet that Hu Yan had booked was not as simple as just welcoming him. However, when he thought of Hu Yan's background, he didn't say much. He just restrained the smile in his eyes and waved his hand expressionlessly. There's no need for a welcoming banquet. When I came here, His Excellency the Dragon King told me that this matter must be done quickly. In addition, I don't have enough manpower. If I delay for a while, it's easy to miss His Excellency the Dragon King's important matter. Hearing that, Hu Yan frowned slightly. However, he still forced a smile and nodded. He said, "That's fine too. When Mr. Li is done with the work at hand, this king will make up for it with this welcoming banquet." Hu Yan was after all from an aristocratic family. In addition to Lei Fan's death, the other city lords had also been stripped of their power. Although the mansion of the Northern Frontier King still gave them the salary of a city lord, their status in the Northern Frontier had plummeted. They couldn't even be compared to Lei Fan's lackey Luo Su. At least now, Luo Su was still a proper city lord of the Northern Frontier. As for him, the king of the Northern Frontier, he was just a puppet that could be abandoned at any time. He didn't feel it before, but now that he had taken over Lei Fan's position, he finally understood why Lei Fan would take such a risk and try to usurp Lin Yuan's power. After all, his position as the king of the Northern Frontier was too oppressive. He was like a livestock that was being kept in captivity. Even if Lin Yuan gave him 100,000 troops, it was still meaningless. As the safest and most prosperous city in the Northern Frontier, the aristocratic families in Shunning City all followed the lead of the Qiao family. Even if they counted the power of the Hu family, Hu Yan didn't think that it would be his turn to be the local tyrant of Shunning City. Even the Qiao family was willing to give some profits to the Hu family in some business. That was because of Lin Yuan's face. If they really fell out, without Lin Yuan's support, the Hu family would be eaten up by the Qiao family in an instant. And outside of Shunning City, there was no place for Hu Yan to show his strength. The aristocratic families in other places were also not to be trifled with. Without the 100,000 guards of the prince's mansion, the Hu family's power in the entire Northern Frontier could only be considered as second-rate. So today's banquet wasn't entirely booked by Hu Yan. It was more of the aristocratic families in the Northern Frontier who had asked Hu Yan to set up a stage. They wanted to see what kind of person Li Zhong, who had come under Lin Yuan's secret order, was. Hu Yan didn't want to embarrass those aristocratic families. Plus, he was really curious about how Lin Yuan would deal with the aristocratic families. So he agreed. However, Hu Yan did not expect that Li Zhong would not give him any face at all. He did not even hesitate and directly refused the banquet at night. Obviously, Li Zhong had seen through his intentions and expressed his position in this way. Loss, anger, grievance, and even a little resentment. All kinds of emotions were rolling in Hu Yan's heart. Hu Yan even forgot to control his emotions. He changed from "I" to "this king" in order to remind Li Zhong that there was still a gap between their status. Then, "I'll take my leave." Li Zhong cupped his hands again at Hu Yan. But this time, without waiting for Hu Yan to speak, Li Zhong had already stood up and walked out of the prince's mansion in the Northern Frontier without looking back. Obviously, Li Zhong didn't take Hu Yan's demonstration seriously. He was here under Lin Yuan's order to carry out the land liquidation plan. If Hu Yan stayed in the Northern Frontier obediently, the prince's mansion would still be fine. But if Hu Yan wanted to play any tricks, to put it bluntly, those city lords who had been raised as idlers could prepare to take over the Northern Frontier King's seal. Anyway, the sudden death of a king of the Northern Frontier made no difference to Hu Yan. And if a few more kings of the Northern Frontier died, these people would clearly see who had the final say in the Northern Frontier. Walking out of the gate of the prince's mansion, Li Zhong mounted his horse and said in a cold voice, "Today's grudge has been formed. This Hu Yan will definitely find a way to retaliate." I'll have to trouble Uncle Gao to be more careful. If necessary, I can talk to Lord Dragon King and ask him to transfer some troops from the southern expedition to Uncle Gao for the time being. Although he wasn't afraid of Hu Yan didn't represent himself now. Behind him was the interest group formed by the aristocratic families of the northern frontier who were forced to stand together for survival. No need. Gao Chuanjin didn't say much. He just gave a simple reply and fell silent. Chapter 403. Back then, the champion of the Fallen Star Army did not know anything else but the art of killing. Otherwise, after the Fallen Star Army left the Yenxing Qi, the renowned champion would only be trapped in the Fallen Star Army in name only. Of course, part of the reason was because Gao Lanfeng cherished their old friendship, but the reason why Gao Lanfeng did not know how to curry favor with his superiors was not small either. If Li Zhong entrusted him with something else, he might not be able to do it well. But for this matter, even if Gao Lanfeng lost his own head, he would be able to ensure that Li Zhong would be safe and sound. Hearing Gao Lanfeng's words, Li Zhong smiled and rode his horse towards another government office in Shunning City. The structure of the members of the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion was extremely complicated. There were people like Hu Yan, who relied on Lin Yuan for survival and wealth, and there were also people who rose from humble backgrounds and became powerful cultivators. And these people were the ones who were most willing to carry out Lin Yuan's orders, because they knew very well that their own success could not be replicated. If their children were capable, they would be able to open the door to cultivation for their children. But what about after that? If their children did not have extraordinary talent, with their small families, they would definitely not be able to cultivate. Their descendants would have to go back to the bitter days of the past. Therefore, the Northern Frontier Academy that Lin Yuan had promised was the biggest motivation for these people to complete their work. Only the existence of the Beijing Academy could change the fate of their descendants, and allow them to raise their heads and be people. Previously, when Lei Fan tried to usurp the throne, the first people he dealt with were these people. But because the time was too short, after 2 to 3 days, Lei Fan only managed to get rid of the tip of the iceberg. However, these people from humble backgrounds were the most precious assets in Lin Yuan's hands. Losing any one of them would cause Lin Yuan great heartache. This was the reason why Lin Yuan had shed all pretense of cordiality with Lei Fan. Now, Li Zhong was going to pay a visit to one of them, because his next job would be completely inseparable from the other party's help. An hour later, Lin Yuan was soaking in the lake water below his lair, his eyelids slightly closed. A male lead wearing a black hooded robe and a devil mask was currently kneeling on one knee, telling Lin Yuan about the happenings in the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion. Okay, got it. You may leave. Lin Yuan was no longer interested in Li Zhong and Hu Yan's next move after the other party reported the situation in the prince's mansion in the northern frontier. Hu Yan's position in the northern territory seemed to be very high, but in reality, he was just a puppet. Although the officials and common people had not reached the point where they did not respect Hu Yan, however, everyone knew that Hu Yan's words only counted in the Hu family. Although the officials of the northern region had to give him some face, when it came to official matters, the so-called northern region king was nothing more than mediocre. When Li Zhong would enter Shunning City and what he was going to do next were all things that Lin Yuan could divulge. His purpose was to let Li Zhong and Hu Yan have a good showdown. Firstly, he wanted to see how this wise and insightful Mr. Li would fare. Secondly, he wanted to use this opportunity to weaken the prestige of the king of the northern frontier. He wanted to let all the officials and citizens of the northern frontier know that the so-called king of the northern frontier was just a so-so. As long as it was reasonable, it was fine to go against the king of the northern frontier. After all, in Lin Yuan's plan, the position of the king of the northern frontier was just a mascot. Why would a mascot need so much power? However, Lin Yuan did not expect that Hu Yan would collude with the aristocratic families this time. The aristocratic families of the 7 dynasties were as numerous as the stars in the sky. Except for the Qiao family, who did not hesitate to sacrifice themselves for the sake of passing down their legacy, the other aristocratic families who could settle down in the northern frontier were, strictly speaking, not very powerful. They were only in the northern frontier. After leaving Shunning City, the influence of these aristocratic families in the northern frontier would decrease crazily with every step they took to the south. Therefore, Lin Yuan really did not take the aristocratic families of the northern frontier seriously. The Qiao family, the only one who had the ability to wrestle with him, chose to sacrifice themselves again and stood on the side of the general trend. However, the aristocratic families of the northern frontier were full of themselves. Lin Yuan was too lazy to deal with them, but they still insisted on taking themselves seriously and planned to wrestle with Lin Yuan together. After thinking for a moment, Lin Yuan shook his head gently and said with a bitter smile, "Li Zhong hasn't asked for help yet. It should be because he has the confidence to solve this little problem. It's better not to rashly intervene." Li Zhong and Hu Yan's fight was obviously a show directed by him. However, after the aristocratic families of the northern frontier got involved, things had changed. However, even though Lin Yuan was dissatisfied, he could only watch from the sidelines. After all, if he personally got involved, the northern frontier would not be able to escape the situation where heads would roll. At that time, even if the aristocratic families of the northern frontier were just trying to survive, they would still rebound strongly under Lin Yuan's oppression, which would bring a lot of trouble to Li Zhong. Moreover, all the strategies of lowering the aristocratic family's vigilance and slowly taking over their land as the northern frontier would be wasted. On the other side, Zhang Xiu, who was far away in the imperial capital, had also received this information. He was only slower than Lin Yuan by a full 2 hours. This was enough to prove the terror and elites of the embroidered guard. After all, if the same task was given to the Shifter Emperor Association, Lin Yuan would need at least another 2 days to receive the information about the feud between Li Zhong and Hu Yan. Lei Chuxing stretched out his hand and played with the weasel hair brush in his hand. He sneered and said, "This black snake always brings me surprises." He actually promoted a young man from the Fallen Star Army to compete with the aristocratic families of the northern frontier. Only he could think of such a thing. "Your Majesty's words are incorrect." Zhang Xiu, who was standing at the side, shook his head and said in a deep voice, "According to my investigation, although this black snake does not follow the rules, he has never done anything at a loss. He must have a special purpose for provoking the conflict between Li Zhong and Hu Yan. In addition, if Li Zhong really defeats Hu Yan, then even if the aristocratic families of the northern frontier are unwilling to cooperate with Lin Yuan, they must first consider how they will struggle to survive in the future after offending this young man. For it to place Li Axayan in this position, it must have its own reasons." Lei Chuxing muttered to himself for a while before waving his hand. He said expressionlessly, "Then observe the black snake during this period of time. Once he defeats the aristocratic families, then according to his current orders, find some remote and small places to conduct experiments. Remember to keep this matter strictly confidential." "Yes." Zhang Xiu had just cupped his fists when he suddenly felt a heavy object fall into his arms. Zhang Xiu doubtfully raised the heavy object, only to discover that it was a book about the new laws of the northern frontier. "Take a look at it when you have the time. This book about the new laws of the northern frontier is quite interesting." Lei Chuxing's voice rang out with a hint of a smile. "You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.